I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the meeting of the Groton Board of Education, Committee of the Whole meeting being held on April 21st, 2025 at the central office, is being held in person and remotely. In attendance tonight, we have Dr. Ackerman online, Ian Thomas online, and that's all I see. We have Matt Schulman in person, Jen White, myself, and Mike Whitney is here, along with the superintendent, and Lauren is here, and Anne Marie's online. So the first item is review of the minutes of March 17. Do you have a motion to accept the minutes? Any questions? Any questions about the minutes?
So moved.
So moved. I have a second. You said yes, Mike?
Yeah, I'll second.
All right. And no questions, no suggestions, no corrections? Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose, abstention, so approved. So tonight we have, we're going to have a discussion, as you see on the agenda, about the accountability index and state report card. This is something a lot of board members have been waiting to hear about, how we're doing as a school district, and I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
All right. So, yes, I've been meeting with Lauren Cassini, who is our student data manager, and our admin team, and we've really looked at the accountability index and the state report card. As you are aware, I've been guiding the board through the process of sharing data as it becomes available. It starts becoming available very early on these days, like in the summertime, to the staff. And then it continues to be able to see different pieces. We finally are able to see the entire state report card, and the report card kind of grows throughout the year too as information and data becomes available. This is for the 2023-2024. So last spring, when kids took their SATs and their SBAC test, and also their NGSS. So it's for ELA, math, and science for grades 3 through 8, and also grade 11. So our kids at the high school have already taken their SAT for this year, which is the 24-25 school year. And our elementaries usually start right after spring break. So they're entering in, they all have schedules on taking this exam. And, we will start collecting or gathering data, and as soon as the data becomes available to you, I will make sure you receive it like you've done this year. The state really tries to provide a very comprehensive profile on explaining the whole child. So it does have the academic piece, but there's also more, and it reminds me of when I came on board in 2014, we had something called the yardstick. And Groton's board, prior to my coming on board, was very progressive. They wanted to know, how is the whole child working? I know we get state test results, but what other things are kids involved in? What other extra activities? What kind of arts? How's their attendance? How's their graduation rate? So even before the state had a comprehensive vision like this, our board had been thinking about that. And it was really very interesting and very progressive. So did
the new board members ever see that?
Did you all ever see the yardstick? The Groton yardstick? I could probably pull up a copy soon.
It'd be really good to see.
Yeah.
We worked hard on that.
Yeah, you really did. And gathering the data, we were working hard, making sure we were gathering the data in a kind of uniform way over the different grade levels. So things like academics, arts access, graduation rate, what happens after graduation, how about physical fitness? So all those pieces are in what you're going to see tonight. And we're going to go in it. Lauren's going to start sharing about the accountability report. And I thought if we could get through the part on graduation, stop, and then answer any questions that you have. But if you have a really pending question, you can certainly ask us. And then we can wrap it up towards the end with all of those other yardstick kinds of things that go even beyond the academic piece. So, ready to go.
How are you?
Yeah.
Okay, so more or less what we're doing tonight is we're taking all those different pieces that you've seen throughout the year that we've come and we've shared with you in terms of academic performance, growth, career pathways. This is our culminating report from the state. So they take all of that information, which we report to them, and they then turn it into, they give us points for certain things, right? Certain indicators, which are listed here. And really, we are identified, they identify a target for us, right, for the entire state. So this, let me back up for a second. The accountability report came as a result of the ESSA Act of 2015, I believe. We're really the Every Student Succeeds Act. So Connecticut developed this accountability report in response to that, and that is what we have here. And so it looks at all the different pieces of what makes a school district great, what makes our students whole, how do we make them contributing members, successful students, right, leaving our school district. And so as we go through, you're going to see the different indicators broken down and what target each one has in its own indicator, but as a whole, at the end of the day, all of those indicators come together with a percentage of points, and those percentage of points, our target is to have 85 or higher for points. Does that make sense?
For the overall.
For the overall accountability report. So you're going to see lots of different targets in here. And so I don't want you to be confused, and I try to really make it explicit on each indicator that we go through what the target for that particular indicator is. But really, they all come together at the end based on the amount of points that we've earned to create this accountability report. So it's based on that.
And we're going to really wrap it up and refer back to the superintendent's goals, which you all helped craft, the academic side, to show you what we're thinking if we look down to 2030 and what that could be looking like. So,
Lauren, who came up with the indicators? The state or, okay.
Yeah. So
And do you feel the indicators are good?
I do.
Okay.
I honestly,
It's what
I
we
think
call the
it
yardstick,
really,
actually.
yeah. And from what I understand now, I was not here for the yardstick. I believe this was much
Yeah.
more before I came to Groton, but it sounds like you were really progressive and understood that it can't just be one thing to measure a child, right?
Right.
It has to be like a whole comprehensive look at who the kid is, right? Each kid and our district, how we are as a district. So yes, I do believe. I think some of the most important things, even more, we want that achievement, but we want to look closely at our growth, right? We want to look closely at how are kids succeeding when they're transitioning from one grade to the next, or one school to the next, right? From middle school to high school. Are they able to be successful in that transition and continue on? Are they able to find what they're good at and what they love and enjoy and kind of find that path and follow it, right?
Right.
Or try that path and decide that's not the path for me and pursue something else. And really connect them with people to make some of those decisions before they leave us. So yes, to answer your question, I do. I believe firmly in these indicators.
Okay. Yeah, because education has changed a lot. Before it was just academics, and now it's really a whole different ball game.
Yeah, we are a village, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't keep going back to that. We're the village, right? So yes.
But
So
they don't have a civic engagement component, to my knowledge.
no, they do not. Tell me what you mean by that, I guess, and maybe I may be able to place it into a bucket.
Sure. Well, we want our students to achieve as much as they're capable of achieving with individual differential teaching. We want them to consider whether it's a career or right out of school or a college. We want them to consider that. But I know we have some people who do volunteer work. I'm not quite sure how. We have never discussed this as a board during my brief tenure, and that's what I'm looking at. We want to develop citizens who are civically engaged and who feel a commitment to be civically engaged all their life wherever they live. So if that's not something we have in this thing, that's fine, but maybe that's something we can consider talking about later as well.
Is community service still a high school graduation requirement? Or did you do away with that?
It's actually through the IB program, and there is a piece that we'll probably pick up in the 8th grade, which is a project that's related to volunteerism and being able to give back to your community. We also have the MYP project, which is the capstone in 10th grade, and that's really a personal project that they really want to pursue. And sometimes that can be civics related, right? But it's something we can definitely discuss.
Yeah, because community service used to be a requirement.
Well, community service is one piece, in my humble opinion, of civic engagement. Civic engagement goes beyond being volunteer.
Right.
But another time, but thank you very much.
So to answer your question, then, no, I think the scope of what you're thinking of is not part of the state's indicators.
Okay.
Okay,
And we can consider if we want it to be one of ours.
True. Yep.
absolutely. And so, I'm going to remind you that our accountability index target is 85. So when we're thinking about how did we perform as a district, right? What is our score or our report card? Our goal, our target for the state is 85. We currently, if you look, for 23-24, our accountability index is 69.9, which is about 2 points higher than it was last year. You'll note the dotted line, and I just wanted to make sure you were aware that there were 2 school years in there during COVID in which we did not receive an index. The state did not put one out for us, for the state, not just Groton. But that's where you see that break in time down at the bottom. Those were those 2 COVID years. What's important to note here is you're seeing this trend, but as we get further into the slides and we get to the superintendent's goals, that's where you're going to see how we plan to continue our growth with this index.
What year do we have until 2030?
2030.
So looking at this trend, does it seem like we'll make it to the 85 by 2030? Or do we have to step it up?
We're going to step it up.
We have an aggressive plan.
Yeah.
Are you going to go over your plan too?
Yeah, not in terms of accountability, our goal is each year to achieve, yes, that is
Slide
part
you've
of,
probably seen that was in my goals, but we're going to talk about that.
yeah, yep. It's aggressive, but it's definitely, we can do it. We're going to.
Yeah.
Positive thinking, that's what we
right.
need.
No, and a lot of hard work, right?
Yeah,
We're
right.
there, we're doing that. Okay, so in terms of our indicators, our first 2 indicators, we have our academic achievement and our academic growth. So that is really your summative assessments. That's the indicators that really give us points towards those summative assessments. Our performance index is 1. So that takes all of the students in our district, all of the summative assessments taken. So SBAC for grades 3 through 8. SATs, they take all of those assessments and then they convert it into the scale score, and dependent on where they perform, it's an overall performance, okay? And that's how we earn points for that particular index, okay? And you might have heard it referred to as the DPI or district,
You're good. No, my fault. Thank you.
You may have heard it referred to as the DPI or the District Performance Index, okay? And then the other metric is our academic growth. This is different because this is a percentage rather than just a point, okay, a scale. So our performance index is, we have a target of 75, and for our growth, we have a target of 100%, okay? And we'll see how that works out, how we did with that in the next few slides. Academic growth, though, it's important to note that the way this is calculated, it's looking at each individual student over time. So it's looking at multiple data points for one student year over year to come up with, did we meet that target? So depending on how they perform one year, they're then given a goal for the following year. And in that next year, they then look at that goal and say, did they meet that? If they did, great. How far did they exceed it? If they didn't, how close did they get to it? Okay.
And in a military community where you have children coming from Virginia and Washington State and Hawaii, those children don't have that calculation if they've been in another state. It's only the students who've been in our state who take the same test that can be recorded year after year. So that's the other thing that we have to think about.
And these-
How many years back does it look then?
So it will go back, third to fourth to fifth. So if we have students who are sitting in the seat in third grade all the way to 11th grade, we can kind of measure that over time. Although
Right.
11th, I don't think we have a comparative.
But I think what you're asking is, when we're looking at it this year, right, when we're looking at our academic growth this year, how far back is it going? And it's from one year to the next.
Yeah.
But we can see trends in students based on how they perform year over year, but the actual number for the accountability,
It's 1 year's time.
it's
All
1
right,
year.
so they would have to be in our district for 2 years to end up
Yes.
as part of this?
Yes.
All right.
And really, the students, which goes back to that, we're often talking about that October 1, that snapshot for the state. This accountability report looks specifically at those students who were with us during that time and who took the test with us. So those are the students that are built into this accountability report. So that's important to note as well. So here is our first indicator. This is our academic achievement. And this is the one you have seen before, okay? We call it the performance index. You may have also heard it as the district performance index or the DPI. Okay? And let me just try to orient you a little bit to what you're looking at. So here are the indicators, and you'll see that indicator 1, our academic achievement, has different parts to it, and it's broken down, okay? So our performance index looks at English language arts, it looks at math, and it looks at science. It also looks at our students as a whole and our high needs students. And we've talked about this before. Our high needs students are our students with an IEP, our students that are learning English as a second language, and our students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. So those are considered our high needs students.
When you do all students, do you include
Yep.
the high need students too?
Yep, absolutely. So you can see the indicators over to the left. So our index rate for 22-23, just for comparison purposes for you, that's how they scored this time last year when we came together. The index rate for 23-24, that's this past June's, right? It takes that whole year. We get little bits and pieces at a time, and then this one culminating report. So that's our most recent one, and you can see in the green, the index rate for 23-24 means that we had an increase, and if you see a red, we had a decrease, and if there's no color at all, obviously we kept the same. Our target, that will always tell you what we're shooting for according to the state, which is 75 for the DPI, and our percentage of points earned, that's the number that's going to tell us our accountability index at the end. It takes up that last column all the way down for all the indicators, and that's how that accountability index is calculated. Okay? So if you look here, I think it speaks for itself. I don't know if you have questions on this particular slide. I know we said we'd wait, but I know this is a lot of information.
Yeah, I like the little conversation.
Yeah, that's what
I
I feel like there's a lot on this page, so if you have questions.
And we color-coded it, so green is, could be slightly or more than slightly up. And the red is like, it could be a small decrease, it could be more that we're really concerned about. And then the black is kind of status quo.
Jen has a question.
Do you have?
Jen, put the mic
Oh,
on.
yeah. Do you have the information of the students excluding special needs? Because our special needs population is 20%, so it's impacting that 59.4. So of the other students, are they doing better, right? I would, like if we were just to compare them within their own isolated group. So I'm okay to show all students excluding high needs and then high needs, and just so that we can get a
I think
perspective.
we've shared graphs and charts on that exact piece.
So we have shared information. I'm happy to pull that back up and send it to you. However, in terms of the accountability index, they do not, the state does not break that information
They
down.
don't break it down. So then it's only for us then, and not like,
Right.
okay,
But
well,
in
that's
terms of
fair.
how their
If I
performance-
could probably back into the math if I made some assumptions,
We
but
don't
that's,
know how many students that represents.
No, because it is, and you're welcome to go on to EdSite Public.
yeah.
And there's a lot of information in there if you wanted to learn more about how the accountability index is calculated, but there are
Yeah.
different formulas depending, and weights depending on each indicator and each area of each indicator.
Mm-hmm.
So to just go in and try to back into the math, you're not going to get an accurate reading.
Okay.
I just want to caution you on that.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Thank you.
Matthew?
Okay. I support the idea of having an additional line. I understand that this is all the state provides, but I think we could add the third one, all students less high needs, put it, highlight that line in yellow with the legend at the bottom that that's not a state standard, it's just for our benefit. But when it comes to resource allocation, if our performance and ELA for the all students less high needs is 72 or 75 or 76, it will guide us to be able to allocate more and target our allocation to high need students. I don't know the numbers of I'm not focusing on a given number and a given line, but I think that there's something that will benefit Susan to know what we need, where we need to put our resources.
Yes, we have looked at those numbers, specifically.
Yes.
So if we could get that at your convenience, that would be lovely.
Yep, I still have that
Presentation.
from the fall. Yeah, and again, in certain places, we can pull this information. I'm happy to show you where that is as well.
EdSite?
It's part of EdSite, but it's under more of the performance piece rather than the accountability piece. Remember, this is like a big picture.
Like putting all the pieces of the puzzle
Right.
together for you.
But if you wanted to specifically look at different areas, and then we can filter that out, and I do have that. So yes, I can get that to you.
And
Thank you
really,
very
most
much.
of these areas are above the state index average, so, not necessarily where we want to end up, but certainly they're right now
Yeah.
above.
Adrian, you all done, Matt?
I am all done.
Adrian?
Yeah, I was just going to say something in regards to separating out children that are in special ed or with IEPs. I don't think that would be an accurate, a group of people or group of students to kind of parse out of these, because there are a lot of students that do very well, and they have IEPs in place to help them do well. So they might be classified as a school receiving special ed services, but you might be surprised at how many of those students are, the special ed services are working very well for them, and they're really high achieving. So I know or at least I think I know what you're looking for with the kids that are receiving special eds, but I think that when we look at 20% special ed, not necessarily like a large percentage of those special ed kids may not be lower achieving students, like in general. So,
But I don't necessarily think it's that. It's like we have in there like low income. Just because you're low income doesn't mean, you know what I mean? It's just a bad, and
well, statistically, it kind of does.
yeah,
But
no, I mean, just because you're
shouldn't.
poor doesn't mean you're dumb, right? I will,
Or have a disability.
or have a disability. I am like totally, I can't do anything about the state. But if we're able to show, and granted, this is just a performance index, right? And it's not what the state is showing. But if we're able to say, here's everyone, and then here's high needs, why can't we show like the people who are not high needs, right? Because if we as a district are doing well in servicing that other population, and the high needs is dragging making an assumption here, bringing the score down a bit, then we maybe don't feel so bad about ourselves, right? Because maybe we are doing something well, right? Because we know as a district, we're like 20% and other districts are like 15%. So we need to be able to, see like how we're performing and are we meeting the needs of all students?
Yeah.
And that's how I'm coming from
Yeah,
it.
I would just say that when we talk high needs, we're a little over 50%, right? So high needs being a different category than just receiving, special ed services or NP place services. So that's why I just don't think that those two necessarily need to go together. I mean, they're included in high needs though, correct? Like if a student,
Reduced lunches.
Yes.
no,
Oh,
free
I'm
and
not-
reduced lunch, but also students with IEPs in place, would they be included in
Oh, yeah.
high needs? Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And EL students.
And then students
Yeah,
learning.
And kids that have multiple indicators,
Yeah, that's the point I want to make, that actually most of our district qualifies in some way as a high-need student, so they're in that. I was thinking the numbers were about half and half, but actually I'm looking on the state report card on the site. This year it's got us, like last year, 2023, okay, so 2023, 2024, just free and reduced lunch, it's 54% of the students. And I don't think that accounts for community eligibility. I think this is,
No, but that helped us to
Yeah,
get community
of course.
eligibility, and especially for Fitch this past year,
and
for the numbers.
and as a caution, it's saying, right, for that, so we're looking at the 2023, 2024 numbers. As a caution, they do have the numbers for free and reduced lunch for this current school year, and it's 67, 68%.
And that seems high to me, and I know we've worked with the food services. I question the accuracy of that, so I think there needs to be a little more. I think it also is difficult when you're CEP eligible, then getting people to fill out their forms for free and reduced lunch is difficult, so I don't know how that number climbs so high.
Mike, you're saying 67% of our kids get free and reduced lunch?
That's just what it says on the state one for, that's for 2024, 2025. We don't have the accountability stuff for this, but so pairing with these, I was surprised to see it that high, actually. But pairing with this data, it's 54%. And so roughly, like, if you've got the all students versus the high need students, the high need students are, what is that, like 8 below-ish, something like that, from 65.2 to 57.3. And so if it's roughly half and half, then the non-high need students, as the state defines it, would be 8 above. So you'd be at, 73%, something like that.
Just
So
as
you-
a rough estimate.
A rough-
So,
yeah.
so we wouldn't be hitting that target, even with the non-high need students.
Right. Dean, you all set, Mike?
Yep.
Dean?
Okay, so these numbers and any other numbers are important as indicators of how well we're doing and how well the kids are doing. And those are tied together.
Seems kind of flat to me, though.
Yeah. Now, I think it would be important to know how we're doing with, whatever the percentages are, whatever the proportions are, how well we're doing with kids who don't have identified, for lack of a better term, disabilities, whatever places them in high needs, whatever places them in IEPs, et cetera. And I realize these are very broad categories. And the fact that you are, categorized as high needs doesn't necessarily mean anything for a student, for particular students. But it would be important to know because there does seem to be an effect. Every time we see numbers and we see low numbers, we say, oh my goodness, look how badly we're doing and what do we need to do? And I'm thinking of an analogy. If you see a report that says that the average American is overweight, but suddenly everybody has to hit the gym, no. The people who are overweight need to hit the gym, just to oversimplify the conditions. I'm just keeping it nice and simple. The people who are trim and fit, the people who don't count as obese, don't have to go to the gym. So at one level, it's useful to look at an aggregate figure and say, well, look at how, quote, American society is doing with respect to weight and diet. But it is important to know within that group who's got to hit the gym who's got to watch their intake, who's got to be careful what they eat, and who doesn't. Because we're not all the same. So, yes, it's useful like this, but I would like to see a differentiation. And I am sensitive to the fact that a lot of people, a lot of kids that qualify, they are people too, who fall into the category of they have IEPs. It's a very, very broad demographic. There are kids that simply, no matter what we do, they're going to perform better, but they're not going to be fully performing. Some kids are just naturally talented than others. Some kids are naturally held back. It's how they were. It's how they are. And other kids, a lot of ground can be covered with a lot of resources applied. I'd like to know where the resources can be applied. And this is just not enough information for me, but I get it. It's how the state requires us to.
What would you like to
As we
see?
go through this.
What would you like to see?
I'd like to.
You said this isn't enough, so. how
Well,
would
yeah,
you
I mean,
break that into
so we say
three?
all students and then high needs students, and high needs is a huge group. You know?
So would you want Lauren to break down the high needs group? I
Yeah,
don't know if
okay.
she can, I'm just.
Yeah, so,
We probably have those reports already, because we have disaggregated it in multiple ways
Okay.
over the year.
I don't know whether we start,
I think this is something we always talk about.
Yeah.
We talked about it last year, so we're talking about the same thing, and we still don't have it. No offense.
I mean, think about it.
You have received it. So in terms of turning it into an index, no, but have we broken down the high needs, non-high needs, all students, and how they're performing? Absolutely. I have all of that. That has been shared at board meetings this year.
And by school as well.
And by
Very
school.
helpful.
And by
Yeah.
school, yeah.
I presume that what we do is we look at individual performance, keeping it anonymous. We look at individual performance, then we say, there's a trend. Kids who happen to fall into this group or that group or the other group, there is a trend in terms of scores. This group, if a kid is, quote, from a low-income household, right, we'll call it that one, or they're learning English, English is not their first language, then we see a tendency toward this level of performance or that level of performance, and therefore, there's a useful label. I'd hate to think that we're working the other way around and saying, because kids are low income, we're going to put them in a group and we're going to keep the scores separate.
No.
I like to
never.
think it's the other way around.
Never.
Because it's also
Yes.
theoretically possible that it doesn't matter what the income level is or whether it's English language. Fact is that it does matter whether English is spoken in the home or not, and whether they, and what the socioeconomics are. Yeah, I'd like more differentiation in order to know where to apply any resources. And high needs, especially because it's the majority group apparently, does need further differentiation. Because the reason why the scores are different are for different reasons. Some kids just need more support. Other kids are they're cognitively impaired to the point where, again, you can improve their performance, but you can't match their performance with other kids. I didn't play football. I didn't rank. That's just, it is what it is. So.
And there is an alternative assessment for kids who have real cognitive impairments, and it's really a checklist or survey that the teachers work on. So there is differentiation even with the assessment itself.
So we're comparing lemons with limes when we do something like that?
Well, it depends on the level, so it's really on an
Okay.
individual basis for kids like who are in our ABA classes or kids who have some significant cognitive
I mean,
impairment.
and I don't want to belabor any points here, but do we have like in yacht racing? You can have all kinds of different boats racing, and there are different handicaps depending on.
Yeah, kind of like that. I would say the state does have qualifications, and it can't be more than 10% of the population, so they have parameters.
Yeah, so shorter boats are given a handicap. Yeah, okay. All right, so we do that. All right,
Yep.
thanks.
Yep.
Oh, I didn't know if we were going off on this one. It's just, I looked at the numbers referenced relative to the state, just for the all students one, for the ELA performance index to all students, the state this year is 63.9, so we're quite a bit above the state on that. For that 1C, that third row, the state is 60.2, so we're not quite a point below that, but kind of close. So we're below on math. And then for science, we're pretty much on even because That's that 1E, that second last row, and that state has 61.8. So,
Where are you getting that from?
this is the report card
Show you where to
online.
go. Don't
Yeah,
worry.
it just is reference. So, I mean, the state average is what it is, right? Every community is different, but then math, we are below the state average on.
And we're actually pretty proud of how we do with high needs kids, because we usually supersede the state pretty significantly for the higher needs kids. And we've actually gotten schools of distinction because of the, the real close, I guess, closed gap at CK. We really had closed that gap
Yeah, so like,
last year.
yeah, so for me, it's like, okay, at least we've got some growth, or not growth, some increases in the ELA and then the science. But then the math, even just looking at our own from year to year, is concerning.
Do we know why it's gone down, Susan?
Why, what's gone down?
Excuse me, I didn't ask. Well, why the score went down for math? Do we have any sense of
Well,
why?
it's so complicated, the formula, so it's looking at every individual child. And like you know, we have 800 come into the district and 700 leave every year, so you've got such variability in the district. But we're hoping, we know that math is the next thing we need to accomplish, and we've just put in a DODEA 25 grant for mathematics, and we want to look at that comprehensively with the board, at least starting with K through 8 and then moving forward. So that's definitely an area we're targeting as needs improvement.
Have we asked the math teachers across the district how their perceptions on why we're not doing better, if they have any insights that can help guide
We
you and us?
absolutely have, and we have a math task force, and Anne Marie is working very closely with math specialists who work with the teachers and the principals. So we're all very much involved in that right now. And it's part of the strategic plan, which we'll be sharing with you too.
Okay.
Yep.
Or maybe you can get back to us and tell us what they came up with so far.
Oh, yeah, that's in the strategic plan too.
Okay.
Yep.
Laura, you want to explain about the percentage points earned? Is the goal 100%?
No. So our target, oh, I see what you're saying. So our target is 75, so how close did we get to that? So yes, the percentage points here would be 100%.
If we got 75.
If we were at 75, yes.
Okay,
Yep,
Yep.
thank you.
you're welcome.
I think, Adrian, the curriculum's working on math, right? Are you doing anything with math? You referred to the curriculum.
Yeah, we actually just met and discussed the plans for the future plans for the math curriculum.
And we're
So yeah, we do
sharing with
have
everybody. Yeah.
we do have some plans for some changes to take place next year,
Yeah.
and for hopefully a new curriculum in 2 years, or in a year and a half from now.
We just had to space it out in elementary so we could get the wisdom.
Yeah, the teachers are dealing with a lot with the
They're doing a lot.
new ELA program.
We're hearing really good things, so that's good. All right, now more green on this one page. This was a little better. And this is growth, which is really what we are looking forward to.
Right. So the academic growth, again, is looking at each student from one year to the next. Were they able to meet the goal that was set for them based on how they performed the year before? And our target is 100% here. You can see that we've made progress from last year in every category for growth. All students, high needs students, across math, language arts, and proficiency in English.
I have to say there was a real concerted effort by the administrative team to really explain this better to teachers so that they would have the insight of what their students' target is, and for kids, especially in the middle school, to understand their targets and to work towards achieving those targets. And teachers would kind of talk to them about ways that they could do that based on the data. So.
And Groton Middle School did improve their own accountability. So the district has an accountability index, and each individual school also has one. And the middle school improved their own personal accountability index by over 6 points, primarily because of the growth that they made. They really did an excellent job in trying to move those kids and have them meet their growth and get close to their growth target.
They're not there, and we hope that
Yeah.
continues to be, a real mindset and, to accelerate that performance.
Any questions on this page?
Yeah, just a quick one. There's no science growth, but there's not on the website either. Is it just because it's new?
No, science doesn't do every year, just 5th, 8th, and 11th.
Right.
So you don't have a year to year.
Right.
Yeah.
So it would make that trying to figure that out from grade 5 to grade 8, that wouldn't
Yeah.
be really accurate, just because of the amount of time, the development, right? Like, it's not year to year.
Right, right.
And then 11th grade as well.
That was a good question.
That was a good question.
Matthew has a question, then Adrian and Jen.
Thank you. So on 2A, line 2A, between a rate of 52.3% and 59.9% is roughly a 14% increase. And that's nothing to sneeze at. I think the teachers really deserve to be recognized. But every coin has two sides, and I'm looking at the green number. We won 100%, and we've got roughly 40.1% that are not meeting the growth rate. And that's where I hope at some point when we get to we'll really dive deep into, are we really have 40% and a fraction that are not reaching the growth target, and how can we move that ahead?
So the growth target is pretty rigorous because you want accelerated growth. So what's also interesting to look at, and we look at this for every kid, is how close to the target are they? Are they like almost there? So they might not have gotten points for totally making the target, but they could be a point or two off from the target. So you also want to see how close to the target did they achieve. And for some of those kids, they go over the target. So there's that little margin of,
What I recall from last year is that the targets, and correct me if I'm mistaken, I seem to recall that we broke it up into quartiles, and there was, not meeting goals, almost meeting goals, exceeding goals.
yeah.
Is my memory correct? So I always felt a little twinge about that because we never really knew whether a student in the second quartile was at 26% or 49%. Is there any way we can even divide up those at least the second and the third quartiles, break that down into half the second, the third, so that each of those quartiles is divided in half?
DPI, so the district performance index, we do have the quartiles. And you're right, the teachers and the parents receive all that information so they can see if they're in the second quartile, how close to the third, which is then meeting the benchmark, are they?
And they can see that their son or daughter is in the second quartile, but at 48%. So they can see that. Is there a way for the board to see that when we get to that?
Not for every individual.
Don't want the individual kids. No.
Right.
Aggregates.
I'm not sure, I'm not sure I understand what you're asking for.
Well, you know what, we can do that. We don't want to take up the time now. We can talk offline.
Do you want to talk offline? Just so
Sure.
that I understand what you're looking for? 'Cause I
Absolutely.
probably have
Sure.
it.
I don't want to take up the time.
Okay.
Was that you, Adrian?
Yeah, so academic growth, I apologize, I may have missed it when you were talking about the measurement. So if a child is, right on target for where they should be at the beginning of first grade, and then they're right on target at the beginning of fourth grade, would that be a score of 100%? If they basically made a year's growth in a year? Is that related to this?
You have to go from third they start. So it would be third to fourth, which would be the first year you could measure.
Right. So the answer is yes and no, right? So when we're looking at when those targets are created, the idea behind the target is yes, that we're trying to accelerate that learning and keep them on grade level, right? So if we have students who in third grade had, let's say, a scale score of, and I'm literally making this up because I don't have the scale scores in front of me, but 1,632, right? That's their scale score. And anyone in that bucket in third grade, the expectation is they'll increase that scale score by 12 points, right? So then the next year, how did they score? How did that child score? Did they make those 12 extra points to get to their new scale score? If they did, then they met their target.
So that would be 100%.
And that would be 100%. Yep, does that make sense?
Yep.
I know, those were terrible examples for
No,
scale scores.
yeah, I understand.
If I had it in front of me, I don't have all the scale scores memorized, but.
Yeah, so 100% is 1 year's growth plus what we're hoping in excess growth is.
Potentially, right? Because we have some students who their target was 12 points, right? But they made 18 points. So now their target, their percentage of points, maybe 110.
Yeah.
So they can go over 100 for sure.
Does that work in our favor?
Sure.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it does.
Good.
Yeah, that all counts.
Because remember, it's a for the district level, it's an average. So yes, it does. So we have some kids that have 110%, and we have some kids that have, 41%. And I'm making these numbers up, and then they're all put together to come up with that.
But Matthew, to your point on the, quartiles, the children in the first quartile, we definitely want accelerated, and their target's going to be larger to move them to that next one. Whereas if you're already in the fourth quartile, there's only so far you can go. So that it's going to be, a little bit less rigorous of not that the kids can't do it, but there's only a certain number you can go up to, right? So you really, on that first quartile, second quartile, you want them moved over. You want all kids to meet the goal, right? Or to have that target growth per year. So, that's all very important.
Okay.
So
Mike?
there's more room to grow when you're in the first quartile.
What was it?
Yeah,
Jen?
I think it was.
Okay.
I think.
Mike's
But,
agenda.
so now, I have my other question that I was going to ask, but based on what you just said, so like if you're on the first quartile, you said they're going to have a larger growth. Is it achievable? Because like you're saying, like if they're on that fourth quartile, it would be smaller. So let's go back to your example. Say that 12 was a middle growth. So like if you're in that fourth quartile, maybe it's only 6, but like in the first quartile, is it like 20? And then now it's not achievable because they're already behind the scale, and then now we're accelerating it. Are we setting them up for failure at
No.
this rate? No?
No, we're just having higher expectations and we're giving them more support because, as you know, those kids in the first quartile, whether they're getting special ed services, whether they're getting intervention, math, and ELA, we're really responsible for as early as we can to intervene.
To bring them-
To bring them along.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I just want to make sure it's like achievable, because like, just based on what you said, that wasn't my original
I
question.
mean, you might not get to a 1 to a 3 in 1 year, but
Yeah.
maybe you could get to, top of a 1 to a 2, to then maybe a 3 by 5th, 6th grade. So that's all good.
Well, how successful are we moving those kids up in those big jumps? Are we really, even with all the support that you're saying we give them, are we successful doing that? When a kid has to go up 20 points, can you show us data how successful we are with those kids?
With the kids that are in that first bucket.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can look at that specifically. I mean, I know the schools are definitely looking at it student by student,
And that's the important.
and that's what they're using to give them support.
So we don't look so much, when we're looking at like the level 1, level 2, right, those buckets that we're
Buckets.
talking about,
Yeah.
they're really, the more important information for us on our end is that scale score, that target, and then more importantly, when we're looking at that scale score, what were those pieces? Where did we fall down, right? So like, what strands or standards are these kiddos really struggling with, so that we can provide them some interventions there?
And it might also tell us
Very
about our
targeted.
curriculum, too.
Okay.
So that level 1, while it gives us a big picture, right, like a quick snapshot, that's not what's really useful to us in trying to make decisions about what to do to help each individual child.
Are you all set, Jen? You have another question?
Yeah, my original question, so let's just look at math, like 2C. So we're saying 56.7% of the kids have met their target, right? So does the target have a range, or is it a discrete number? So you had mentioned 12 in your example. Is it really 8 to 12, or not, it's 12?
depending on what their scale score was initially, what grade level they're in, it's
It's not a range, so that if they fall into this range, they're considered
You either meet it or
successful.
you don't.
You
But
either
then
meet
there's
it
a
or you don't.
percentage, how close they get. So
Right.
There's a percentage of growth.
right,
But
and that's
you
what
either get
this
that
is.
or you don't.
Right.
Okay. I was just trying to understand that number. Thank you.
But it is important to see how close they get.
And I actually have a chart that may help you just, so I'm a visual learner, so to look at a chart that had that might help, and I could show you that to you. It may not necessarily mean anything to you other than to kind of get a sense of how those targets are created.
Yeah,
I don't know
no,
if that's
that'd be
helpful.
great. Thank you.
Mike, did you have a question? No. No? We're all set? Okay. Moving right along.
All right, so our chronic absenteeism, again, our target is less than 5%. We are on a slow, steady decline. We have a lot of things in place that we've been doing at every level to address the chronic absenteeism.
Can you give us some examples?
So, so we have our basic interventions. There are attendance teams in every building that look closely at this on a regular basis. Attendance letters that go out. We have, you and Superintendent Austin have sent out community memos to families, just letting them know the importance of it. So really community outreach on a big level, and then also at the school level and individual level, really getting to what's going on. You know, is a student chronically absent because they took a vacation or because they had, an illness that was extended for 7 days or 8 days, right? Because there you go. If you've missed 2 days in the beginning of the year and now you had the flu, you potentially could be considered chronically absent, right? So just monitoring those kids and figuring out who truly, who was sick and has absences, but it's not, habitual, versus who are kids we really need to look closely at because they're missing 1 to 2 days every month, right? Because those eventually add up, or aren't coming to school at all, or who are really out quite a bit, or who are out of the country and just have
Yeah, we
not
have a
come
lot of that.
returned. I mean, we have the gamut, so
Right.
really understanding why and where kids are is a big focus in the schools.
I would say, though, the thing that's most critical is that the principal and that crisis team or that absentee team meets on a regular basis at the high school and the middle school, because we have the assistant principal and the counselors. They meet on a regular basis, every bi-weekly or monthly, to really look at absenteeism, and really almost, they do a daily count. But if they see a trend, they absolutely confront it, and they make phone calls, and they go to visit, and they sometimes bring a team to visit if it's really a problem. We do have a few cases in every school where a child might have not wanting to go to school, so you have to work with the team to get them to feel more comfortable coming to school.
And we do have processes in place for those students in particular who are what we would consider disengaged students. There's literally a step-by-step process of how to address that.
What's the definition of chronic absenteeism?
Chronic absenteeism, it's students who have 10% of the absences of the school year.
So in 180 days.
So in 180 days, if you're absent 18 days, you are chronically absent. So it fluctuates, right? So let's say within the first month of school, you've come down with the flu, right? You've missed 5 days.
Yeah.
You, my friend, are chronically absent right from the hop. But as time goes on and more school days accrue, right, your percentage is decreasing, so you can have the potential to come off that chronic absenteeism list.
Now, I'm old school, so do you still make students, when they're absent, come back with a note saying why they're absent? You don't do that anymore?
No, there's 2 different ways you can be absent.
Yep.
There's
Excused and
excused and unexcused.
So if they come with a note, then they're excused. No note, then it's unexcused.
So the first 9 are officially unexcused. They don't necessarily need to ask them to bring notes so that it is excused. But anything after that 9th day, they're required to, and there's, again, different levels of what kind of documentation they need to be considered excused after 9 days, so yes,
Because then there's the truant component.
right.
There's so many.
Oh, Lord, yes. Then there's truants, yeah.
Do we have a problem with that? Do we have students truant?
Truant, sure. Do we have a problem with it? I would need to take a closer look at that. But yes, we do have students who are truant, for sure.
And do you refer them to the Department of Children and Families? How do you address that issue?
They absolutely do. They have a non-emergency number that they will call, and I've heard the principals talking about that. If there is a problem and you can't reach them, then you can.
But again, it's all dependent on the situation as well, because again, truant is considered 4 times in a month. So our poor kid who had the flu and was gone for 5 days could technically, right, be considered truant.
Yeah.
But then when he gets his note, he's no longer.
Right. So, it's really about understanding each individual student
And the family.
and the family and what the situation is. It really is. I mean, so.
You have a question, Matthew?
I do. I know we have 4,400 students this year, but I don't remember last year, so I picked the number 4,200, and 18.8% is 790. So call it 800 students roughly met that classification last year of chronically absent.
Based on yes and no.
I'm just if I'm off a percent or so, I'm still going to make my
Yeah.
point. So I'm not arguing the details. So of those 790 or 800 students that technically meet the classification of chronic absenteeism, have you any sense of how many of these are solvable problems? I mean, if somebody is ill and in the hospital for 3 months, they're chronically absent, but that's a very different problem. So, out of this, what is our target audience where we can really make a difference? Are we talking half of them, a third of them? Some we're never going to rectify because that's just the nature of it.
Right.
So what's our target that we're aiming for?
So I think that's more at the school level. That's information that's housed more at the school level. And again, it comes through those conversations that they're having during attendance teams and when they're reaching out to families. We don't collect that specific information up here, like the whys. A student.
Do we provide guidance to the principals
Yes.
for their discussion and so ask them to, if they don't have to report the data to you, at least be very clear that, we look at these factors to determine, yes, we have 16 students in this particular school who are chronically absent, or 80, but of those 80, we really understand 45 of them, and that leaves us 35 that we really need to work with.
Yes. Yeah, so, but number-wise, no, I don't have that for you. I probably could get that. It would take me some time just to collect it.
No, I don't think I need that. I just, what I'd personally like to see is be reassured that there is a informal policy or an informal standard so that each of the schools is working with the same standard as the other school and evaluating these.
Yes, there are. There is
not
an
only the attendance policy, but also the tiered levels of intervention that is
Okay.
within the policy.
Yep.
Something we can absolutely look at again.
Yep.
I did hear this year, as I've heard each year, that illness was still a problem, and it wasn't just COVID. It was RSV, it was flu, and there were a lot of cases where teachers and staff and children were getting multiple things. So you think a week out for the flu, and maybe it's not a whole week, a week out for COVID, a week out for this and that could easily make you chronic.
Right.
And all you've been is sick. But then there's other reasons that they're out too.
And those other reasons that maybe school administration is stuck on, that's when we typically will get the call here, either Anne-Marie or myself, what can we do about this? This student has been out of the country since January, right? Do we continue to accrue absences? Supposedly they've moved out of the country. How do we address that?
Right.
So,
We had one of those.
So we've had a couple, but those aren't they're not an overwhelming amount, but they do exist.
Thank you. Dean?
Yeah, Matt brings up a good point. And I know we've talked about this before, the absenteeism. And we've walked away from these discussions feeling, knowing that there are several reasons why a kid could be absent. Anything from an illness, absence, out of the country, just plain old truant.
Or college visits.
Let's see if I can understand, if I heard correctly. Individual schools themselves may know what proportion of their absentee kids are out because they've had the flu. They're out because they just went to Disney World. They're out because they're out of the country, or whatever it is. But at our level, the higher level, quote unquote, we don't know.
The reason behind a lot of those, no, I would.
Yeah, so for you to know and to then relay numbers to us, this, half the students are out because they just don't feel like coming in. And they're making excuses. Maybe their families are making excuses, but there's all kinds of reasons that they don't feel right in school, they're bullied, whatever, they just don't feel coming to school. The usual traditional reasons why kids don't like to go. Versus how many illnesses, versus how many, other things. Lack of transportation, they missed the bus or something like that. You don't know that, but you could know it, but only by harvesting this information from the individual elementary schools, the middle school, and the high school.
Yeah, potential.
That's the case? Okay. I'd like to know, because, there are some cases you can't work on. If a kid is chronically ill for 3 months, what am I going to do?
Right, exactly.
But if a kid just doesn't want to get his rear end in here, well, that's something you might be able to work on.
And those are the things at that level that are being worked on. And I know that even as a school, we've done a lot, especially with the larger schools. The middle school and high school has done, we've had the whole campaign around the district about, we need you in school. You make it a better place here. So, and I know that Matt was talking about competitions, and I guess it's our sophomore class that's winning by leaps and bounds, because they're always showing up, and every month they have a month-to-month competition, and they've got, I think he's even donated from the student activities money towards their, their grade level support team, so that for their different, incentives that they have, whether it's a prom for, junior year. So they've done that, and they've had some real success in that, and the middle school as well.
Because if 80% of our kids are out, I'm making numbers up, but if 80% of our kids are out because of reasons that we can't help, illness, just put illness in there, right? We can't do anything about meeting the 5% goal. We'll never get there at that rate. So, periodically being informed, but I'm not going to sweat that. But if it's the other way around, sure, some kids are out because they're chronically ill. But most of the kids, 80% of the kids are out because, for one reason or another, they won't come in. They're literally truant in the classic sense. That would be a concerning figure. That is, then there is a way to actually get much closer to 5%. That's why I'm interested in knowing the relative proportions.
Is that something you can get, Carlos?
I think I can. I need to talk to the individual schools to see how they're collecting that, but I think I can.
And they are collecting that, or aren't they?
At our admin council, we have Dr. Mari Ridington, who's going to be doing some tiered intervention supports around discipline and absenteeism, on how we're doing that. So that's happening this Thursday. So we'll make sure that we do a concerted effort in collecting that information from the viewpoint of the administration.
I mean,
have them all
ultimately, it's to the
together.
detriment of the kids if they don't come in for whatever
Oh,
reason.
absolutely.
But,
Yeah.
a lot of things are out of our hands. I just want to know what we're talking about when we say that, 18 or 20% of our kids are out.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, Dean, especially elementary, it's really not the kid's fault. Sometimes the parent hasn't gotten them on the bus, or they've asked them to stay home.
Yeah, I don't
And
mean to say it's the kids' fault.
Right.
But especially younger kids, they can be, and older kids too, are enabled by their parents. And you'd like to think that the parents would throw the kid on the bus.
Right, so
which
hence
I
the
actually
letter
still
from
have.
Beverly and I, really trying
But-
to encourage families to, and to talk about this, and send out parent square messages too.
But there has been a trend for at least a couple of decades of parents, unfortunately, enabling their kids, not just truancy, but other forms of conduct we don't consider sterling.
So let me get back to you on that. We will talk to them on Thursday.
Thanks.
And can you email us that information?
You want me to email it? Yep.
We
Jen.
can put it in a board note.
So-
Have it.
And Lauren, I'm making an assumption here, which could be bad, but maybe what we could do is come up with a spreadsheet, right, that is uniform, that gets distributed to all of the schools. And we pick 5 categories, whether it's illness, whatever, like another 4. Don't make it 10, because then it can't be trackable. It will just dilute the information. But if you pick like 4 or 5 types of absenteeism, and then name whatever, approve on, and then make it consistent. And we can't do it this year, it's probably too late, but like for next year, right? So then all the schools are tracking it in the same way, and I think it will fill Dean's point. We can consolidate all of those spreadsheets and then see what type of absenteeism is there between the 5 categories.
We'll check on Thursday to see what they're already doing,
Yeah.
to see how they're tracking it.
I would
But the fact that you're saying, like, you're not telling me that they're tracking it all the same way, that means
That's what I'm
each
gonna
school.
ask to say.
Yeah.
I mean, the state probably also tracks it, and how, because they have different verifications of absenteeism, they have different codes for different things.
Oh,
So
do
it's
we
all-
get that
Oh.
information in?
No, it's so, at the state level, it's just, are they absent, are they
Oh,
not?
okay, I thought that
Okay.
was for
Yeah.
We
illness.
try.
Oh, I thought it was.
No,
Also,
that's really,
how long?
I would have done it that way.
Because again, an illness, a stretch is one thing. If a kid's absent habitually like 3 days every month kind of thing, and they always seem to be gone on beautiful Fridays or beautiful Mondays, I'd kind of like to know that. And 18 days versus 180 days?
Right.
That's, and the range in there, are we talking about Ferris Bueller, or are we talking about kids that literally aren't showing up most of the time? Again, that's 2 different groups.
Does that make sense to you, what Jen is asking?
total. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, yeah. So let me talk to them and see what they're currently doing.
And like she said, it started next year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even to know sick versus knowing that they are sick and they've had a doctor's note versus not. And what is that other?
Matthew.
Okay, so my child is ill, isn't coming to school. Is there a way through parents, or perhaps you're already doing this, that periodically during the school year say, we're having a recurrence of flu or RSV or something, so if your child is ill and you expect him or her to miss more than 2 days of school, please let us know and we'll send homework home, we'll provide support so that they don't lose, do we do something like that automatically?
I think that the nurse will indicate to the admin team, if there has been a child who's dealing with something that is, the parent has called and said they have an RSV or they have a flu, and it's extended time, and they work out those details, whether it's a child who lives in the neighborhood to bring work home. So that does happen, or the teacher assigns something if they're able to do something.
give some-
Depends on how sick they are.
Give some reflection about whether there might be something you could put in as the need arises with the seasonal variations in health, to do something in Parrot Square to remind them that if their child is sick, we want them to stay home and
Yes,
get
that's
well.
right.
But if
They
your
don't wanna
child
share
is
it.
ill and misses a week of school, that's a big deal, so let us support you.
Dean?
Yeah, I just thought of something. I want to make the point, because we're talking about, we look at everything through the point of view of the schools. And the school is everything for us, right? And the child's education is everything for us. And we sometimes lose sight of the fact that from the point of view of the family, whether it's the parents or the children or anybody else, school is one thing that's going on. It isn't everything that's going on. And so, I'm not sure where I'm going with this, except to say that it may account for, because there may be other things going on in the family's life that would understandably, or for whatever reasons, just de-emphasize the school. So it might not be the child itself, it could be just be stuff that's going on in the family. So I guess my point is, I just want to say that I do understand that we're looking at it always from the point of view of the school. But school's just one thing that's going on in that family. We may say they should prioritize education, that's wonderful, but life is life. So I get that.
Evening?
Yeah, so this came up in the GEA meeting, and from the teachers and staff. I mean, it sounds like all the individual schools have pretty good plans, and they are on top of this. But one of my big takeaways was communication between the teachers and the parents. And I mean, part of it is the teacher, especially in the elementary, they don't have a ton of extra time to be able to communicate with 20 parents. But in any given classroom, there might be 10 kids that are out a lot or something, or 8 or something like that. So ways to support the teachers, or although some people may feel that social workers aren't as important, social workers, to develop that line of communication and really bring the parents into the district and help them become part of our family along with their kids. So there are ways that we can look at this from that aspect, but I think at least my takeaway was just communicating with the families and making the families, like, letting them know that that we're here to support them and trying to just bring them in. So other things that were brought up were for the older children, maybe a truancy officer, but I think that was it. And then I was just going to say on this slide, it would be great to have chronic absenteeism broken out by not necessarily individual school, but age group. So maybe elementary, middle, and high school, because I think that there's big variation between that. And looking at the whole district really misses a lot. If elementary aren't absent, but middle, has a high absentee rate, and high school back and forth.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, go ahead. You allocate however you like.
No, are you finished, Dean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, Adrian, I call you Dean.
Oh,
Adrian.
we look kind of.
so Adrian brings up, he reminds me about the GEA liaison meeting. I think it was at that meeting, or maybe a conversation just outside that meeting, where some teachers made the point that we are past the days when if a kid was absent for whatever reason, we could just send the worksheets home so they could do the work at home, because the way that classes are set up, the way the curriculum is set up, because of the collaboration factor in education and instruction, it's not as easy as saying, well, here you go, here's the packet of stuff you would have gotten if you were here, so take it to Disney World with you or the hospital or wherever, and just turn it in and you'll be all caught up with everybody else. That by not being in school, it's very difficult to catch up, maybe permanently behind the curve.
Good point.
I think I heard that the same
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
You're right.
Now, that's a big problem, and that could contribute to why some of the kids are behind.
Behind and stay
Yeah,
behind.
And stay behind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else on chronic absenteeism? No? Okay, college and career readiness.
Okay. So our preparation for college and career readiness, there's 2 indicators. We have our percent of students in grades 11 and 12. This is specific to grade 11 and 12, who are taking courses that college and career ready, right? So either your 2 AP, IB courses, 2 CTE courses, which are your tech courses, or 2 work-based learning courses. Okay. So the target is 75%. Although we have, our number from last year has gone down a little bit, we are still well above the target.
And I said, boy, a goal would be 100%, because you think either 2 IB, 2 AP, a combination, or 2, we have every child picking a pathway, so 2 pathway courses. That should be really doable for kids.
What's the exams that they take?
So the exam part, the percent of passing exams, again, we're talking specifically about grades 11 and 12. That is either they're meeting there's 2 factors here that play into this. Either they're meeting or exceeding benchmark on summative assessments such as SAT, ACT, those types of assessments. Or what is the other thing?
AP and IB assessments.
IB assessment, did I say AP?
And AP.
Or they're taking 3 college, they've earned 3 college credits.
If somebody's taking the EMT class and passes it, does that count?
That's it. Yep, and nursing. The certification.
their certification.
Okay.
You're right.
So, so it's a combination of one of those two things.
How do we discern success in our OTC?
So they have inspections, and there are, I have to get Terry, that would probably be an interesting thing to talk about. But they definitely have their benchmarks that they have to receive.
But that wouldn't show up in this.
Okay.
No, but I'm curious about what is the ASVAB? Do they take that as part of? I'm not positive. I need to check on that.
You need to find out more about that.
I need to find out about that, actually. That is a very good question.
So if the military doesn't, and they do have a standard, but it doesn't play here, this would be a lovely place for an asterisk. And then below the bar, not included in the state category, we had 22 kids, 21 of them passed, or 22 of them passed.
Right, or to tell Ajit, you missed this one, just like I did with the kids who sign on to that service, and it's not counted for this. But now they're sitting at the table with the Department of Defense to figure out how to make sure we do that.
I'm not sure the nursing counts for this one either. I'm not, I mean, just the blurb I'm reading, it says SAT or ACT, as you said, AP or IB, or earning three
credits.
College credits. So I don't know that the nursing.
Or the ENT.
Yeah.
So that's a real problem I've talked to
Yeah.
Ajit about, is that
Yeah.
career readiness, if we're really putting our money where our mouth is and saying it's college and career, we need to find ways to account for kids who are on these pathways. It's really important.
Because otherwise, the way Mike is saying, it's only
It's only
college.
college.
Yeah,
right.
it's a state problem, so that number 6% passing exams, it's actually demonstrating post-secondary readiness.
Right.
And so it's only the college pathway,
Right.
but, you know, there's.
Do they earn, does the nursing do they earn that credit for college in that course as part of that?
I think that it is at that level this year, that they.
I think they earn a college credit as
in the
part of the
UConn
course.
program.
Oh,
It's connected with UConn, yeah.
But
I'll
this
find out
doc-
more, though, just to be exact.
This document also serves to educate our citizens about what we're doing. So even if it's not a state thing, we should have a asterisk or a footnote at the bottom to mention those things that are not covered in the state.
So-
In addition, ABC.
So Lauren and I, in preparing for this, we took notes, and we'll give you the note, our cheat sheet, note sheet. But this would be probably a good document to put up with that and to put out, as our notes, so that people can see behind the scenes the answers to some of these questions.
Jen?
So Susan, going back to number 5.
At the mic.
Oh, so Susan, you said going back to number 5, right? It's, so do we have like 8 or 7% of our students not taking pathway classes or IB or AP or honors? So then what are they taking that they're not getting ready on a career path or a
Well, that-
college path?
Yeah, we have to do a deeper dive to find out
Good point.
if they're not accounted for. And sometimes it's even the coding. Have we used the proper coding?
Okay.
That matches with all of those things, because the state has very specific codes that will give you these credits. So I want to find out. That's a
Okay.
good question, yeah.
Anyone else? Hi, Lauren.
Well, I was going to say, so in terms of that, I mean, you can take your basic classes, I'm assuming, and like, I don't believe an honors course would necessarily count here. This is specific to AP, IB,
ECE, UConn,
ECE,
dual.
right.
and CT.
Or
And CTE.
or the CTE, right, or the work-based learning. So, I mean, there are some courses that are just honors,
College or
basic
honors, yeah.
college, core courses, music, right? So there are courses that could be taken that don't necessarily fit into one of these buckets.
And the target, remember, is 75%, and we're at 92.4, so.
Yeah, no. Going back to your comment
Yeah.
that you wanted
I-
it to be
I
at
was-
100,
I
you know what I
couldn't do
mean?
that, Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold tight 1 second. Jay and Ian, do you have any questions?
Or Andrea.
Andrea? Jay, are you still there?
No, I have no questions, thank you. Very thorough.
There's Ian.
Jay, are you still there?
No, I don't have any questions. I appreciate everyone chiming in. Everything that I could possibly ask or raised as a point has already been addressed by my colleague. So I appreciate y'all.
Okay, Jay. Now the real Jay. Are you still there?
Yes,
yeah,
I have no questions at this point, thank you.
Okay. Lauren, how do students decide whether they take the SAT or the ACT? Did some students take both?
SAT is required by the state, so that's the state test, they all get it.
They have to take it.
They have to take it.
Even if the college they go to doesn't want SAT.
Even if you have no
That's the
intention of going to college, you still take the SAT. It's mandatory. It took the place, it's part of that accountability report, right? So it took the place of us having to
CAPS.
do
That
the CAPS, or was it?
Test, yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
But
yes, everybody
There
does
might be a
take.
school that might require the ACT, and they would take that in addition
Right.
to.
So we do have students that do opt to take the ACT.
Now, when you give us a report, do you include the ACT test results?
We don't have them.
Do any of our students do it?
I'm sure they do, but the state, since we have to collect the data for SAT for the state, that is housed for every child who's taken it. But the ACT would be student by student. The counselor may know.
We can get that. Would you like that?
Yeah, just to see how they're doing on the ACT. You have a question, Mike? Okay. You're looking like you do, Mike.
I don't have a question here.
High school graduation
But you're right.
beyond, you might have a question.
You don't have a question yet.
And I've actually reviewed this with Matt and the team because I was a little disappointed to see this, and I've asked them to do a deeper dive with the counselors to see, how we can be better on track. And you
What do you
also.
mean better on track?
Well, so on track to high school graduation, we went from 92% in 22-23 to 86.3. And it has to do even with eighth grade performance. So that's one of the things that I've been really saying to the middle school and bringing middle school and high school together. If you've got a child failing a core class in eighth grade, anywhere in middle school, that matters. So we've invited and expect those kids who failed a core course in eighth grade to do our Apex in our summer school at Fitch. And so we had about a dozen kids who did do that last year. So know that the team is working on plans to help improve that on track to high school graduation because the eighth grade performance matters with that too.
So that number actually comes from when we look at on track to high school graduation. It's specifically looking at ninth graders and how they're performing. Two indicators there. They're looking at freshmen who have 6 courses or more. 6 credits or more, and are not failing, have no more than one failure of a core subject in a semester during their freshman year. So those are the two things that they look at that determines this on track to high school graduation. So are they earning 6 credits? Are they passing their core courses?
And I would say the counselors do a good job of identifying kids who have failed core courses. And they're keeping close track of that with the counselors and the admin who know those kids over 4 years. And so we do invite the 8th grade, but we also include 9th, 10th, and 11th grade to do credit recovery when it's needed.
So we have been slowly implementing other supports for ninth grade, and we recognize that this is definitely something that needs to be examined closely. We recently, this year, had the high-dose tutoring. I know we've talked about for math, so that extended to the ninth graders this year. We have the career fairs that were happening, and those transitions into the high school for those eighth graders. Eighth graders also were part of that high-dose tutoring. They have those individual courses or interventions that exist in the ninth grade for reading success, and then also for math interventions. They have the Apex. So they are looking. They have Falcon Academy, and again, the most important thing I think is that those administrators and the counselors are sitting and really looking at on a regular basis the students who have D's and F's. and putting plans into place for them.
Is any strategy better than another? Are you keeping track of how the strategies are all working? So is Apex, are you more successful with Apex than Falcon Academy? Are you keeping some kind of track on?
I would say the counselors and admin team are keeping close track on that. Like I said, every second to third week, they're looking at grades and they're monitoring and they're putting these things in place as they see them. So a child might have to switch to an Apex class, let's say they're loaded with other classes, and this will help to correct a situation before it becomes a problem. They've also put in semester grades. So in the middle of a semester, you can get a credit or a half credit and a half make a whole. So they've done some work to really expedite that. There's also CTL where they are able to meet with their teacher, and not only can the student reach out, but the teacher reaches out as well if there's a child who is struggling with something. So I think all of those things are, a child could have multiple kinds of supports. The task class, which I know that that came to us from a parent who had found that, and we put that into place. It's been very successful. It's like having a resource period for kids who might be non-special ed, but they could even be AP, IB in a task class.
Well, we might have multiple supports, but the declines doesn't speak well of those multiple supports.
Well, you're right. You're right.
Do you have any data before 2022, 2023 school year? Is this
Related to this, we
Yeah.
can go further back.
okay? Do you have an idea how it was before?
I mean, many things did take a dip after COVID.
I just want to see if this is like different. Like we were doing well, and then from 2023 to this year, last year, for some reason something happened.
So the high school graduation really has been like this. It's just fluctuated, and I'm trying to make sense of that as well. But yes, it has. You can see it just kind of goes up and it'll peak, and then it drops, and then it goes up and it peaks and it drops. The four-year graduation, off the top of my head, no, I can't remember exactly what that. I'm pretty sure we were on a decent incline, but I'm not positive. So I would need to go back and look at that.
Thank you.
So I view 7 because it's only 9th grade, 6 credits, and 1 F, correct? That's the criteria to.
Yep.
So I could say like 15% of my 9th grade class has an F, at least one F or maybe 2. So I view 7 as a leading indicator, and if you see that, then we need to hone in on that 9th grade class because
But not wait till 9th grade. That's why I'm saying in
The eighth grade.
You got to pay attention in middle school so that they don't get in trouble in 9th grade.
on their first year,
Yep.
like their transition year.
I don't want to wait. I have to really look at what's happening in middle.
It might even
Okay.
be before 8th grade for all
Right.
we
Yes.
know. It could be
For all
like,
we know, yeah,
I'm
okay.
thinking like we got to really focus on the elementary level.
And do we do something similar for like them going 5th grade to 6th grade?
A
Yeah,
transition.
we do have
We do.
transition.
Okay.
Actually, they go to the middle school, they visit, there's orientations, family
n-
orientations even in the summer.
No, I mean like the score, like showing or
Oh.
no?
No, they don't have.
Whatever criteria would be different,
Right.
you know, obviously.
Yes.
So, okay, I wasn't sure, but yeah, no, definitely we need to pay attention to 8th grade then. To give those kids maybe we spend like a whole week of like, here's welcome week, here's your teachers, do things like get them comfortable with the classes and then say like, hey, this isn't like in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, you're like walking in between, well, I know they are like down there too, but just make them more comfortable and like this is how you're going to be assessed, and like it's, even though some people might think it's fluffy, when you're like, what are you, like 15, 14, sometimes just moving from one building to another, that might
So they have a
help.
40-minute CTL period. And that is partly advisory as well as getting extra help. So you're right, and I can double check on that, but that would be essentially that ninth grade class coming in, and then they stay with that teacher throughout the years. The teacher's there. So, that's a time when it can be advisory, Naviance, or we use some kind of a tool for checking on their interest and their, their success. But it also can be a time when the teacher who's in the CTL can orient them, especially the first couple weeks. Like, we should find out if that's
Yeah.
actually been done.
Matthew?
First, I'd like to say something great. On line number 9, I think that folks who are meeting the needs of our high-need students need to be congratulated at that improvement. Now, back to line number 8. I believe I've heard that our average high school class size from year to year ranges to about 300. Is that correct? Okay. So that means that pardon?
Just under.
Well, I'll use the number 300 just for point of discussion. So in 22-23, we had roughly 31 students who did not who matriculated students who did not graduate. I'm not sure that's great. I don't know how we compare to other schools, but it's not a cause for joy. Now this year, we've got 47 or 48 or maybe 49 students. I haven't really parsed it out. That is not catastrophic, but it is really very serious. And I think we need to know, and maybe you already do, why this happened. Whether we need to ask the teachers why it happened, whether we need to ask the administrators, whether we need to ask the kids who are not going to graduate why they feel, what impeded them from graduating. And no names attached. I don't want the kid to have to sign his or her name to anything. But these are our clients. There's no one better than our clients to tell us what their perception is of our educational system. Maybe it'll be fluffernutter. Maybe there's something to be learned. It's something to consider. They're still in school now for another 3 weeks. We can learn from these youngsters.
Maybe they're out of the country.
Well, then...
I say that only half jokingly. I mean, if this includes kids who are also chronically absent, then that group includes kids who they're out, not a couple of days, but
Well,
they're out.
that's something. I mean,
If you look at that, that's a good point.
if we determine that it is worthwhile to ask students, then it's asked to ask administration. I presume my number 48 is correct. It may not be correct. Of this 48 students, how many of them are out for reasons they left the area but didn't sign out, but they've left the area, or they've been very, very sick?
Are you using the baseline of 300?
I'm using the baseline of 300.
I know.
And so it's
So it's like
15.8%. 15.8% comes to roughly 48
Right.
kids. Okay, so out of those 48 kids, plus or minus, we probably can account for X, whatever that is. Call it 6, call it 10. That leaves us with still roughly 40 kids. They're the ones who can teach us what their perception of what was going on so that we can evaluate it. And maybe there's nothing to be learned. But if we're not careful, we might learn something.
So with the transient nature of the kids, in the military community, we have something called a compact, which assists the military child in getting the right courses that they need. When you're talking about the tri-state or the tri-district areas of New London, Norwich, and Groton, that there's a lot of movement between high schools. Like, I just met with several young people who have had 3 or 4 high schools in 3 or 4 years. And they are getting some extra credit recovery because while they should be a junior or a senior, they're really not there. They've moved from school district to school district. They've had failures. They've had homelessness. So there are instances where there are family issues, family ingredients, things that have come across. And, we have a handful of kids who really struggle to have a comprehensive education. And so at Fitch, we make sure that we give them all the credits that they need, but that we give them all the courses that they need, too, to graduate. And we have a large number. 27 is our number of credits in order to graduate.
Everything you say, in my humble opinion, is laudable and true, and yet and I want to get at the and yet. So I don't want us to be caught in our silo of educators looking at what we see is going on. I want to turn to the students that we serve and get their opinion as well. We may be able to identify half of these kids for one reason or another, but that still leaves 24 kids. So
And even if it was 5 kids, we still want to know.
Right.
we still want
The
to know.
number doesn't matter.
Exactly. So I would personally, I don't know what my colleagues feel, I'd personally urge you to consider the possibility of maybe asking the students and to do it in a formalized way with no, we're not seeking any names, just here's the form, fill it out, stick it in the box with no name. I don't want to embarrass
They would
anyone.
have that data. They would know for sure who those kids are.
Sure,
Right.
sure.
Well, then they can give us the reasons.
Well,
But still,
with the kids.
but still give
No,
it to
they
the
can give
kids,
us the reasons,
because one of
because
those
we wanna
kids
know.
for whom we know that there was 4 different schools or 8 locations, they still may have a perception that will still be useful to us. In spite of the fact that we know the major mover, there may be something that is minor to us but major to them.
Right, that's absolutely true. You're right.
All right. Jane, is that something you can get though for us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
We still have time
is
this year.
it necessarily a concern? Because this is almost like, are they going to graduate in 4 years? But someone, due to some unforeseen circumstances, could be going to GED, could be going to night school, can maybe graduating in 5 years. So this is like a metric saying, are they graduating in 4 years? But the question is, are they graduating at all? That's like what, and like I said, I can't worry about. But you know what I mean? So 4 years is a finite time frame that we're putting on this, and yes, we want everyone to finish in 4 years.
Or 6.
Or 6. But not everyone's situations allow them to graduate in 4 years. And I'm not defending it.
And I get it, but that's why we're going to do this research between what the administration can find out on its own and what the youngsters tell us. We will have a more complete picture.
Right.
And heaven forbid we come up with a new strategy.
You'll say,
I'm all set.
Michael.
Yeah, following along with that line 9, it is great to see that we're going up. So that's a 6-year graduation rate. We went up from 80.4 to 81.5%. So that is encouraging. However, the state rate for that is 86.6%. So that I saw that as a troll area with last year's number, and it's I guess maybe our gap's widening too. But anyway, we are over 5% below what the state average is. So that's high needs students not graduating in 6 years. So I find that very concerning.
What's the state average again, Mike?
It's 86.6%.
And you're line 9, right?
Line 9, yeah.
Do you have the state average for the other lines?
Yeah, for that line 8, the one above is 88.4. That's the 4-year graduation rate. And then the on-track to high school graduation, that's the first line. I wrote it as, I think we're better than that one. I think that's 84.5, but I kind of wrote messily on that. And then the post-secondary entrance, sorry to skip around, number 10, the last one is 68.4 for the state. I think I can check those.
And are you checking number 7?
Yeah, number 7 is 84.5.
And so the post-secondary entrance is specific to students entering a 2 or 4-year school anytime within 1 year of graduation. To me, this is a place, though, where we need to be thinking about the career piece, right? So we do have things in place in the district to help students who maybe are opting for something other than college. And so that's not accounted for here. This would be the place where the military may not be accounted for. Our friends who have worked with electric boat and have taken on jobs and are learning on site there through
Getting
them,
education.
training through them. So those kiddos that we're promoting, right, through our pathways, they're not in that number. So that one's tricky, but it is, yes, it is what it is. It's those students that have gone to a 2 or 4 year school within a year of graduation.
Yeah, I'd like to see someday the state get more serious about
Me
the
too.
career readiness part of this.
Yeah.
Because they should have a companion, like number 11, like.
Right? Or like a 10A or a 10B,
going
right?
to Navy.
Yeah.
Can you do that? Could you have the data that we can do that and have 10B highlighted in yellow and say post-secondary plus military plus career placement?
So we have had many conversations with the state about this
Bob Ross.
piece. And
Bob Ross.
Bob Ross.
Artist, but the Veterans Liaison.
Bob Ross. We had, those conversations have happened. I don't know if they've stalled or where. We probably need to get an update
Said,
on that.
last time I saw him, just a week or two ago, he said that they're still trying to get to DOD to get the information. They've got to find a way to track it.
Yeah, I believe.
It's not on the
they're-
clearinghouse, that information.
Yes.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
That's a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just have one more. So you said our number of credits to graduate from high school is 27, which is high. I noticed we've like added on. I figured that was kind of blanket across the state. It had to be added on. Do we have a high number compared to, say, area schools?
We do.
So
That was the decision that we made at the board level.
But what's the state credit?
State average is 25 or 26.
25, I think. It might have changed.
And we had been at 26, and we raised the bar to 27.
Or they were at 25 and they raised to 26 and we went to 27.
I don't know.
I'm trying to,
I
I
don't
know.
know.
We're one credit ahead.
because there's certain things baked in, like so many years of English, so many
Oh,
years
yeah.
of math,
Oh, yeah, there's a
social
lot of
studies,
criteria.
personal
Yep.
finance, things like that. But I think maybe that's worth revisiting because I like having high standards, but the difference between getting a high school degree and not getting a high school degree, if we can lower the credit requirement to something still in line with what the state would find acceptable, then that could really make a difference. Then you're chasing around 20 students instead of 50.
And these numbers may be affected by that new graduation rate, too.
Mike?
With Dean's first.
Actually, I think you had your hand up just before mine went up, so.
So, Mike, I don't know the date, but if we could find the date that the board discussed going to 27 credits, that might be worth listening to hear the arguments for why we did it, because it was an extensive discussion, but I don't remember it clearly now. Perhaps you do.
I don't, no.
It was about 2 years ago. But we don't want to go backwards, Mike.
No, but we'd
We don't
like to
wanna,
hear-
Like, go back to 26.
Why? Why
Yeah,
not?
why not?
I mean, it's-
Why would we?
so you get more students with a high school degree that are meeting the standards that the state
That's assuming that one
requires.
difference makes a difference.
Is that one class? One class, right? Or two classes?
One class.
I mean, that gives them a little more, you can only take so many classes a year. It gives them a little more wiggle room to, like we're building these paths to success where you can have a hiccup along the way and grow from it and learn. And in some regards, well, I'll just say like, students mature a lot in their high school years, right? And so having them giving them more room to recover from issues would be helpful, I think.
There's something to be continued, I guess, discussed.
Could we find out what the date that we discussed this at the board? And that, I mean, I get your point. I get your point. I'm not arguing with you, but I do think it would benefit everybody if we all look at it again at what the discussion consisted of.
Yeah, I agree. I'd watch it.
Dean?
Yeah. I mean, I'd also like to know if that extra credit is what's holding some kids.
Yeah, that's what I like to know,
Okay,
too.
so that my question is clarification. When we say that the target is 75%, we're talking about 75% of all students? Or 75%, it's not 75% of kids who are college-bound and only three-quarters of them get in kind of thing, or wind up enrolling. That's 75%, that's the goal, 75% of all kids, right?
Right.
Is that what that means? I'd like to know why it is, and I don't want to go back to the days when only 5% of high school kids ever wound up going to college, But there is a phenomenon now of a lot of kids discovering that they're going to go to college because this has been the story for decades now. If you go to college, you'll be more successful, make more money, et cetera. And a lot of people are just checking out. There's also a large gender gap, a huge gender gap. That was either last year or the year before. There were 1 million more women who applied to college than men. And you see this all across the U.S. More women are, more degrees are awarded. It's like a 60-40 split now. Of all college degrees, 60% of them are awarded to women as opposed to men. The men are just checking out for one reason or another. Some are going to trades, some are just not going. They decided that college isn't for them. So
It's also bloody expensive.
I don't want to be, well, there's the expense too. It was always expensive. It's a relative thing. But now it's bloody expensive, and so people are weighing the benefit of going to college, and they're making some hard choices. They're not going to take out a $250,000 loan to major in something that's not going to pay that back. So, if we're expecting 75% of our high school kids to go to college, and we're working toward that 75%, no matter what, I think we have to ask the question: why 75%? Maybe we shouldn't worry about it. The kids that want to go to college will go to college, and the ones that don't. It's a huge societal thing going on. So I don't know why we're stuck on the 75%. Maybe we've been at 75% for eons. I mean, is the state saying 75% because ideally we would like 100% of our kids to go to college, or the state's decided that of all the high school kids, 75% will go to college, the other 5% will go into other careers or trades? And who came up with that proportion? It just seems absurd. Again, I'm not arguing for the elitist position that only some kids should go to college, but there are hard choices people are making. So maybe we don't worry so much about the drop in the number.
So
maybe kids are making a rational decision.
One of the things that Jeet has offered is to actually come to a board meeting. I've talked to him, and he maybe Zoom in or whatever, but he is very interested in, these kind of discussions, and he would be very responsive. He's been the guy who's worked on this accountability plan since the beginning, and he's really a tremendous leader at the State Department. I really give him a lot of credit for good thinking and being responsive to our needs. So I think this would be I'd be happy to follow up, and maybe it's a summertime thing.
Who is he?
Ajit, I can never say his last name.
G.
It's a J.
Yeah. But that could be something we could continue on
Yeah, in the
and
summer.
invite him in.
Sounds like a good
He might
discussion.
learn something from us, you never know.
He might like it, yeah.
Any other questions on high school graduation beyond aging?
I was just going to throw in one thing. The high school has started offering half credit
Yes.
if a student passes, or at least they will, I believe, next year. If a student has a one-credit class and maybe they fail the first half of the year, they're not going to get credit for that. But now at the end of the year, if they pull it out, they can get that they can get a half a credit for the second half of the year. And that was done specifically to help pull up high school graduation rates. I'll have to say that I agree with Mike that those numbers of how many credits to graduate, I mean, that's really meant for the kids that are going to struggle or not quite our strongest kids in high school. So being kind of on par with what the state recommendation is or the state average, I feel would bring that number as a more fair number. I mean, what that means, there is a big discussion that was a couple of years ago, and that is certainly worth listening to again. But I think that's fair if our numbers are low, but we have higher standards. Maybe the standards don't need to be high. I mean, we're not a prep school. I mean, we graduate a lot of kids.
We want to have good standards. I'm not for dumbing down stuff.
Not dumbing down, but just
to make the numbers look better. Let's do this.
no, just to meet on par with the state, with the state
We
standard.
could be better than the state.
We're not.
We're not.
I didn't say we were. Did I say we were?
We
I said
have.
we could be.
I agree, but we should do that through teaching kids to read and math and things like that. As far as graduating, what we're talking about is different.
I think Andrea could chime in on this But I seem to recall now, as we're talking, that this was motivated in part because they felt that social studies had just been lost, and social studies had been lost, civics had been lost, that those tools were very important, and the only way to get them in would be to increase the number of credits. If I'm mistaken, Andrea, correct me, please.
I wish that I could. I'm really unclear. I'd like to see that segment again that we talked about viewing again.
I'll get that to everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Joyce is very good at tracking those things down.
I just remember that I don't think I was I may have voted for it, but I don't think I was totally in agreement with it, because I think again that we ought to be on the same page as the state. And I understand Beverly's concern about dumbing things down. I don't think it's that we'd be dumbing down. I think we'd be creating a more equal playing field. And I think that Adrian is correct, and that's that we should be looking more closely about what we're requiring and expecting in the classroom itself. So that's where I'm from, at this moment anyway.
Ian? Ian?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I would be inclined to be aligned with like Adrian's and Andrea's concerns. And to Matt's comments, I mean, I'm wondering, like, so if that was the rationale, I definitely would like to revisit that to hear what the rationale was for increasing the credits, because that was a plan that's already in play when this board came online, when I got on board. But if the concern was adding extra credits in order to get civics and social studies back in, what classes displaced those in the first place? Would be one question. And second, we're looking at overall graduation rates. What's our percentage again? Just refresh my memory there.
84.2.
Four-year graduation?
Yeah, 4-year graduation.
84.2%.
84. Okay, so yeah, I mean, yeah, we're looking at. We should be looking at how we can create holistically a student that is capable of functioning in society. And if they want to choose to go to college, it's great. If they want to follow a trade, that's fine too. So it's all about the fundamentals first. And I'm concerned with that rationale that we have to add credits in order to bring in civics and social studies. I'm not sure how they got this place from begin with.
So, Ian, civics is a 0.5 mandated course for all students to take, so all kids have to take civics. I think the question was, in most core classes, there are 4, science, 4 ELA, 4 math, but it was hard to put in 4 social studies as another requirement. The more requirements we add to graduation, the harder it is to graduate. So the more demands that we put on, the state is already putting demands on us, but then if we add to the demands, it's going to be harder. And I'm wondering if some of these demands we've added may have influenced some of the numbers. I mean, I don't know, but it just makes me wonder.
That's Dean's question.
Yeah.
Did that one credit influence the number or not?
And some of the other things we've added
It
over
might
the
be
years.
2, because I just looked and it said state is 25, and you guys said we're at 27, so that's 2 extra
Yeah.
classes that
So
we
it's
added.
definitely a different percentage we're working off of than the state.
Sounds like we have a future topic.
Yeah, we do. I think we do.
Topic for another day.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So, back to the yardstick. Physical fitness matters. Oh, I'm sorry, Ian. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
thank you. I just want to circle back to finish my comment. I do agree. I think we should look at getting back to where the state average is. We should definitely, figure out what requirements are maybe making us max out, which ones are individualized to our district, and how necessary are those really for the core mission
Right.
Okay.
of producing functional citizens.
We get it. Thank you. We get it.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
So seeing some improvement, physical fitness matters elementary, middle school, and high school. And it's definitely been something focusing that the physical education teachers have been working on, knowing what the goals are and the data, and really kind of getting kids prepared for that in their physical fitness classes. And arts access, too, seems to be an increase. I've always been proud in Groton. Art and music is really very important in our elementary, middle school, and high school. I think it adds to everything else in life. So that is being recognized. And just making sure that we've got that coded properly for the arts access so that we get everything that we are giving, that the state understands. So that is a good indicator.
And so, again, if you look all the way to the right, the percent of points earned, those were all calculated from all of those indicators, and it comes out to be that 69.9, which is where we started at the beginning of the meeting, and which is up 2 points from last year.
And then we've got some comparison data.
Oh, just briefly, I don't know if you mentioned it, but for the arts, we're like over the target.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. And then for the physical fitness, I realized this years ago that we were way under the state average, but that's a big jump from 1 year to the next. So that's
Well, and they're working, it's
encouraging.
definitely something I know they're working on. So,
And so here we have our accountability index, right, which, remember, that target is 85, where we fall as a district compared to other districts in our DIRG. Okay, which
and
is,
Bristol's a little bit of an anomaly because they had some validity issues with theirs, so
which is why it's just starred, that we're not sure if that's
it was resolved.
right, the placement, an accurate, correct placement.
And I know that everybody likes to look at the region as well, and those are our local districts. And this is really with the accountability index itself. We've looked at it in other ways, in ELA, math, and science, and but this is looking at all of those puzzle pieces together and where we come in.
Just for the DIRG, I see there's some sources that say that the DIRG is sort of relic that was decided a long time ago, and it's not being updated by the Connecticut State Department of Education. Do you have any feel for that?
They are districts that are more like ours with the number of free and reduced lunch kids, the socioeconomics. And I've talked a lot about this to Lauren. She had been in Hamden, and Hamden and Middletown are similar. Vernon is one that we really equate a lot with, and that has some similarities. So I think most of those, they're all alliance districts as well, and we fit in there with them. So they have more similarities than differences. I wouldn't say they're exactly similar, exactly alike.
But I guess what I'm asking is, the State Department of Education, do they ever update this list, or do they still use it for anything? I mean, it's used, like I get that they're sort of roughly compatible, but I think it was decided like decades ago.
At least
Well, it was-
15 years ago.
It was first an ERG, which was an economic reference group.
right.
And then it became a DIRG, which was the district reference group. So it has been revised. I don't know. That's another Ajit question. When was the last time, and how are you using that? It's a good question. It really is. But they are alike in that they're alliance districts. They're a lot of them are sized very similarly to ours, and then have some of the same
Yeah.
distribution.
So why not, why not group just amidst the alliance districts? I mean, I get that there's overlap, but for instance, there's different sizes, like Hartford's not there, for
Right,
instance.
right.
That would be a very
New London's not
different.
there. So, yeah,
Yeah.
Norwich.
So move towards just the alliance.
I'm just, asking the question.
Alliance.
Because we know the state uses that for something, and I don't know if this, I guess we're used to looking at it, the
Yeah,
value
we
of
are,
that.
but, I don't know what it tells us, really. Although I like to be closer to Vernon. I like to be ahead of Vernon. That's my goal.
Adrian?
How many alliance districts are there in the state?
36.
we were 30.
So this is this is kind of the
Yeah.
lowest we're comparing ourselves against the lowest performing districts in the state.
Not in this, though.
Well, in this, if you're saying all these are alliance districts.
Yeah, but there's
I mean,
more alliances that aren't there.
This is like, yeah, but
Yeah.
this is still the bottom, like achieving third of the district. Not that they're the bottom schools, but they're, as far as achievement goes.
Yeah, our DIRG is G, there's an H and an I. H has got the Ansonias, the Norwalks, the Norwiches, the Stanfords, West Haven. I is Bridgeport, New Britain, New Haven, New London, Waterbury, Wyndham, and Hartford. So I imagine that the H's and I's, I'm guessing, because at Group A,
That's my New
Darien,
Canaan. I was there
Easton,
half
New
my
Canaan,
career.
Those
Yeah.
groups.
Yeah.
So I think they're ranking these in an obvious way. My guess is that we're Group G, but probably H and I are also alliance.
Alliance, they are. Yep.
Maybe F as well. I don't know. Up above us.
Dean, you have a question? Dr. Ackerman, you have a question?
Yes.
Yeah,
Sorry. You or Andrea?
Go ahead, Ian.
it doesn't matter. Ian, go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say, like, I find it more informative to look at the just comparison by region, just because this is the region we live in. So, going with our experience with these ones, there's no guarantee that those are other aspects to look at. Maybe there's something to be mined out there. But like these are the schools that are producing these are the people that live around us, and that we compete for the same opportunities in colleges and careers, the trades. So like, I find it concerning that we're showing up in the bottom third of that graph. So I think we swing for higher fences here, and the DIRG. I agree with the criticisms of the DIRG as far as like the alliance districts, like that's one thing to consider. But that's as we've determined in the discussions, there's many reasons and many ways, and we're not even sure why we got classified in the first place. There's been shifting narratives on that. So we gotta look at what do we know. We know that these districts are next to us. We know the region exists, and I would like to see where East Lyme places on this as well.
My question, Ian, you're asking my question. I look at I see all of them, but where is East Lyme and why isn't it here?
Right. So, and that's very curious. Cause I know that district operates a little bit differently in some ways. I would like to know more about how they do what they do. So, again, having free and reduced lunch and all this Title I stuff and all that, that's broad strokes. But these are our neighbors, our friends and neighbors here. So I think there's something to be mined out of the regional comparisons. So I'd like to kind of do some deeper dives on that. Thank you.
Andrea?
That's, as I said, Ian asked my question, and then that was, I'm sorry, I didn't say, I didn't go first, and that was, I see that East Lyme is not here. I want to know why. Why was it left off? And I like Ian's suggestion about looking into what they do.
We can certainly add it, Andrea. There's no reason why we didn't. It just didn't show up. So we can do it. We can add it.
Okay, thank
No problem.
Nobody wants to do that. So if you want to, I know. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Who's that there? Dean.
So for what it's worth, we're in Group G. New London is I, Norwich is H. So above us is Montville in Group F. Preston is E, Ledyard's D, North Staunton's E, Staunton's D, Waterford's D, and East Lyme is Group D as well. So all the schools that are above us in the region, and even if you threw in East Lyme, I don't know what East Lyme's score is, but if East Lyme was included in the graph, East Lyme is also, they're all in higher DIRG groups Again, this is with a grain of salt because how are the DERGs determined, et cetera, but there's an obvious, as I said, ranking in these groups. I don't even know why the DERGs are done the way that they are. Maybe to make people within the group feel better, because you're only looking at your group.
Well, maybe to do apples to apples as close as you can do it.
Yeah,
That's why you have
I
to
mean,
do
that
They started out
might
with
be one way
economic
to do
reference
it. But I mean, if you were to look at us on a statewide basis, and there are 169 towns, I understand, not 169 districts, but if you don't like this chart, you should see the other chart. That said, even the top performing schools, you remember how we used to grouse about the fact that 49% of our kids, or roughly half our kids, meet reading requirements or math requirements and all that, going back to the 3rd grade, 5th grade, 8th grade assessments and all that? Even New Canaan, which is number 1, their number is 75%. So hooray for New Canaan, 1 out of 4 of their kids don't meet requirements. And they're the top district in terms of, scoring. So, yeah, I take all this stuff with a grain of salt. But in fairness, when you look at us, the ones that are better than us here are already ranked higher by the state. So would I like to climb out of this? Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, we all have that goal. That's what I want to get you to, is the good page.
But I think the next chart ought to maybe have the other DERG groups as well to put this in perspective.
Well, we got to see all the bad and the good.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
East Lyme on the website for this year, it's 83.3 for this accountability score. So it'd be the tallest tower there.
I see Andrea up there.
Andrea?
What was that number?
Andrea?
83.3.
I think you're muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's right.
I have another question about the DERG that I've always had, and I'm wondering that if the state is going to relook at their definition of how they do it. However, as Susan has mentioned several times throughout the year, and again in this meeting, we have military families coming in here all the time, and I'm noticing that Bloomfield is within our DERG, and I know it's supposed to be communities that are like ours. I can see somebody moving from, Bremerton, and they're sitting down at the table, and Mrs. Smith says to Mr. Smith, honey, we're going to Connecticut. Should we move to Groton or should we move to Bloomfield? I mean, that's absurd. So I don't know where the comparison realistically really lies. So that's all.
Ian?
Thank you. Yeah. So just some of, I guess, for action questions, points. What are we doing to look to set ourselves apart from those in our DERG? If we're going to go with the DERG grouping, and have we done any sort of critical analysis, looking at other districts in the region to look at what they're doing, or why are they succeeding? And third, how do we compare to other districts in other states that have similar military concentrations, the dynamics that we have? Thank you.
So that's a good segue. Thank you. Because our next 2 slides, we've got the schools of distinction that we want to highlight. Catherine Kolnowski, in ELA, students with high needs, there was no real significant difference for all students. And at Thames River ELA, students with high needs were also recognized as high. They were achieving well.
What year was that?
That was this past year.
2024?
So we wanted to look at the strengths that we saw here, and we'll also look at the areas of focus. And you've heard this, too, from the principals. They've come in and given you bits and pieces, and their game plans, that's been part of their school improvement plans. But we want to see the increased number of students making academic growth. Growth is really very important, and for those that we can measure growth, we measure growth. For those military and moving out of state here, we want to make sure that we give them the best we can so that they will be able to show us their performance on the DPI. So CK eliminated the achievement gap, as you saw. GMS increased its overall index for accountability by 6 points. The overall performance for all students, ELA and science, is showing steady progress over time. There's increased performance from 22-23 and 23-24 on physical education and arts access that we saw. And there is a decline of chronic absenteeism, which is a good thing because we wanted to decline down to 5% by 2030. So wish us luck. And we're going to show you how we get there. So if we turn the page to area of focus, we do see that performance in math has been kind of stagnant and stalled. So we really want to do something more sooner than later. I know that Anne Marie has talked to the curriculum committee and will be sharing the strategic planning and our sub-plan on math. And one of those pieces is the iReady pilot for a universal screener in mathematics, which we've really been looking into. And it may take the place of Dreambox, definitely at the middle school. Providing professional development and research-based instruction practices like the Building Thinking Classrooms, and we can tell you more about that. Exploring new resources to build coherence, K-8, and then transitioning into the high school. And then high school graduation preparedness and rates have fluctuated. And we need to really pay close attention to that and maybe look at what are the reasons why we're seeing some of that, and try to really identify the problem before we can solve it, because that's what we need to do. Especially those 8 to 9 transitional supports are really important. And going back even before 8, like you said, it could be elementary, middle school supports that we make sure we have in place. And then,
Okay. Any questions on the strengths or anything like that before we go on? Okay.
I do have just one question, I guess. How to phrase this. So, this is basically, is this the plan that we're going to use to try to, overcome, we always hit the Title I, the free and reduced lunch, that's our classification, that puts us in the dirt that we're in. These are the things that we're doing as investments. These are the plans. These are the programs that are going to help.
We're just highlighting some of the strengths and then some of the areas of focus. The strategic plan that you're going to be introduced to very shortly is really the comprehensive 5-year plan. So we're going to be getting into that in detail, and we'll talk about when the best time to do that is, but sooner than later, Ian. I really want to share that with you because a lot of work has gone into it from a whole collaborative team, and we want the board to weigh in. So that's going to be the guiding plan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? And you'll be part of that and that discussion. That's a whole nother meeting. But good point. And now, going back to my goals, and you all helped me with this because you wanted it charted out, mapped out, and it is a pretty rigorous plan, but if we're to get the accountability index to an 85, we have to make a couple percentage point growth each year to get there. And, we really want to try to get there by 2030. So looking at, the prior year or this year, comprehensive year, and then what would be for the year we're in now, when the kids take this test, is they're ready to approach that or have done that, and then what follows. And so they're, high achieving goals, but like with the strategic plan, I'm hoping that strategic plan will help support it, and our budget will help support it. Because really, the things that you've added to the budget, and I'm saying this out loud, really do help support our students to accelerate their learning. And I had said that out of the gate, I think that's something worth fighting for, because the budget will help support these achievement goals. DPI and ELA, where we were 24, where we hope to be in 25, and you see also, again, a couple percentage points a year to get to that 75 goal in 2030. And we actually think maybe we could get there by 2029, which would be really lovely, but we'll see, but we really want to work towards that. And then the DPI in math, which is also 75, trying to get there by 2030, also a couple percentage points each year. And then DPI science, where we were at the end of last year, where we hope to be, and that's even more aggressive, I would say, right? Especially from 23-24 to 24-25, and then, a couple points each year after that to get to that 75. So, and then chronic absenteeism, we want it to go in the reverse order to get down to 5%. That's really aggressive. And, but if we're at 18.8 now, can we get to 16? We've been monitoring it month to month, but like Lauren had suggested, each month you've accumulated more days, so it should get better over the course of the year. And then, it's really like a 2 to 3 point decline each year to get it down to 5%. But I think it's a worthy goal. And you will help me in designing this plan. So I thank you.
Adrian?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, I mean, these seem to me like district goals, and I know they're in the superintendent's goals that you gave us, but for the record, we never actually discussed those goals as a board or approved them as a board. Not that we need to, but we haven't discussed these goals, and I myself had some modifications to goals.
Well, you don't vote on my
don't vote on
goals.
the
They're my
goals.
goals. They're goals I set out to say, if we want to get there, here's a trajectory of a
We did
way
discuss
can
them
go.
one time, but we never re-discussed them.
All right, well, that being said, to me, these just look like district goals that we would have to take to reach the state requirements. So it's just broken up evenly. So I just kind of wanted to point out that, there were superintendent's goals but we hadn't talked about it.
When it's Dean?
No, Matt, first.
No, you go. You were generous to me. Go.
Oh, all right. So whether they're superintendent's goals or district goals, or whether we voted on them or not, these are, as we go from period to period, year to year, it's where we are, where we'd like to be at the end of 2030, and roughly, sometimes exactly, even increments to get there. So that's a linear, for every one of these things, it's linear. You go from here to here, and it's a straight line. And I realize that there's nothing magical or holy about the numbers in any particular year. Maybe it's a small point. How do we know that progress is linear? How do we know it's not some other curve? Or how do we know it's not a curve?
Well, or how do we know it's not going to do this kind of roller coaster ride a little bit along
and
the
really,
way?
I don't have any information that would allow me to not only just critique this, but also suggest a more realistic alternative, that in fact it's something logarithmic or something exponential or something geometric. And I suppose this is as good as anything to say, well, we got to go from 69.9 to 85. How many steps is that? That's 6 steps. For 85 minus 69.9, divide by 6, and just keep adding that increment, rounding to the nearest, nice figure, and that's how we get to 85. I suppose that's as good as anything else.
Well, and I think each year, Dean, as we go through this, we might have to readjust. We might have to adjust, but it's a lofty goal. But I think it's worth saying if this is the expectation. Now, do I think all districts are going to meet these goals in 2030? It's a very laudable goal for the state, but maybe not even a New Canaan.
I don't care about the other towns.
Yeah.
I can't. I shouldn't say I don't care. I can't care.
Yeah,
about the other
right.
towns. I mean, I would like to care, but
Is there a penalty for not reaching these goals?
No.
Oh, okay. So,
No, and with COVID, they even gave us more time, right? I think the original was by 2025, and then COVID set us 5 more years, so, yeah.
you're on, Matthew.
I'm on. Well, there's nothing intrinsically wrong with these goals. They're wonderful aspirational goals. They're metered out in small bites that look on paper as if they're things. But the proof is in the pudding. So I don't know. I know you've been working very hard on this 5-year plan, and I'm hoping the 5-year plan will be pretty specific about the intermediate steps. What's going to happen? I mean, at least out 5 years in a perfect world, and we may have to revive this 5-year plan every year. We may have to revise it every year. In World Bank parlance, when we're doing a project, the goal is to increase agricultural production in Nigeria by 2% over 6 years. That's a huge number of crops, the number of problems, the number of languages. We use something called the PERT chart. I'm not saying a PERT chart is appropriate, though it might be, where you actually block out time period by time period, mobilization, getting the resources, applying it, evaluating it, and it is a very complex situation. This is aspirational, nothing wrong with it, but it is no utility in implementation. I'm hoping that the plan you have will have some form of chart, some form of communication that will say, with regard to ELA, here's our 5-year plan, year by year, what we expect to do. With regard math, here's our plan, year by year. And with regard math, I would love to see 2 plans, one with our getting the grant and one if we don't happen to get the grant, because there are forces beyond our control that work in the country.
Right.
Okay? So, we're looking at, praise God, but past the ammunition, we've got to have a plan B.
Right. When every single grant, I've explained this to you all, that in those DODEA grants, there's the planning aspect, there's the implementation phase, there's the keeping track of, there's the data collection and the data mining. So it's a work in progress all through the year, and there's several different kinds of reports. So that's happening simultaneously with the DODEAs.
But we are looking at that with great respect. We're looking at that through the lens of the way things have worked up until now. And chatting with Ernie Kochmeyer about the way things work with his funding streams. They're not continuing to the work as they have up till now. So we've got the complex problem and having to plan for 2 alternatives. One with something relating to our steady stream of funding. We're not going to go to the town and ask for a 20% increase. And Mr. Lamont hasn't called me up to promise that he's going to give us the funds if the state cuts it, the federal government cuts it off. We need to plan for both. And I'm hoping you all will. Thank you.
Maybe when we get grants, I notice on Learn, when Kate applies for grants, it comes to the board of directors, and we can see the grant and how much it was for. Maybe we can start seeing that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then we can, we can know what grants we have, what they're for, how many years, and so on and so forth. Thank
you, and thanks for bringing that up about the grants. Actually, and to build on that, I think you and I might have been discussing this the other night. But with those grants, to have the breakout of the amounts, where they're coming from, but also a breakout of where their intended targets are. Where's the money going to go? What's it going to purchase, or what's it going to do to support students and staff? An articulated plan for each grant, like how that money's going to get divided up, and where's it going to go. That would be good to know, just to kind of, again, get a sense of the actual utilitarian side of the plan. And Matthew, thank you for bringing that sort of context up. And as we are looking at the grander scheme of things, I'm having a bit of a groundhog moment day. This feels, we've been over these numbers before. They're very similar to last year.
They are last year.
They
are last
year's numbers. Possible financial stresses and with changes on the federal level. At the end of the day, teaching and learning, it's all about finding, it's like being the worst pitcher in the world. You want to be able to throw things that they can hit first, and then you increase the complexity to get them to the levels that they need to get to in order to graduate. And what that takes is time and attention, and in my experience, it also requires a certain flexibility. And sometimes I do have concerns that we have these programs and, you know, we're changing this iReady to Dreambox or vice versa, you know, or shift, you know, at the end of the day, like, you know, I mean, I've had pretty good success in my experience, you know, as far as just, I can use new material. I have great flexibility in my classroom, but with my classroom, I have small numbers, so I have an advantage. And so I get to know my students, I know kind of where they are, and I have a variety of resources I can use. I can draw on the most modern stuff, or I can go back 40 years and grab a 40-year-old textbook and pull some graphics out of those that may be more, you know, insightful for someone, depending on how they understand information. And so sometimes I wonder if we get ourselves locked in too tight to certain plans and certain programs, and not, like, you know, working with the teachers and giving them the space and flexibility they need to throw pitches that the students can hit, and then slowly increasing complexity as they develop their confidence. You know, back to basic teaching and learning. You know, so if we end up in budget crunches and we have to, you know, forego like some, or possibly forego some purchase of new material, new curriculum stuff, you know, some of the old stuff did work if we go back far enough. Like, there's some very fundamental texts out there that, you know, yeah, they would have to be modernized maybe in certain language aspects, but all in all, you know, math is math. You can throw it, you know, four different ways, any different problem.
That's always been, Ian, I'm going to cut you short because you're going to go on and on, I know. But that's always been a complaint. No, I just want to say that's always been a complaint of teachers, that things are always changing and they don't have much flexibility. So teachers always have complained about that. The state is always changing the curriculum. There's always new mandates. Soon as one thing comes up, they mandate something else. So I don't know what we can do about that.
That's something that we have to think about.
Yeah, I agree.
About until, you know, maybe it's time to do a critical analysis of all that. Because really, like, you know, at the end of the day, maybe we're overthinking the thing. And, like, we just got to, like, create the time and space for the teachers to get to work with the students. So that's all I got to say. Thank you.
If you're going to do the tracker, can I exit with Lauren just because
Yeah,
I've got my nephew in town and I can sneak down the hill and say hi to him?
Lauren, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate
I
it.
just wanted 15 seconds, not even.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I want to point out that as we go year to year to year, and we have these goals, we don't make widgets. Right? And we're not even growing crops. We've got kids, and a relatively small group of kids. It's a small sample size, just a couple of thousand, 4,000 kids, maybe 5,000 kids. We don't have 30,000 kids or 60,000 kids like some districts in this country do.
Yeah.
And so you get a different batch of kids all the time. So we're trying to measure our performance against a different background every time. We don't have enough kids for a reliable average to track. So I'm in favor of, you know, goals and keeping track and all that, but let's not be too disappointed if we have hiccups.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, Dean.
Yeah.
Mike.
So I know we're still on the same thing, but I had wanted to add something to the agenda, which might affect your leave time. I don't know if it's the appropriate time.
What do you want?
I wanted to add a discussion of the USDOE letter.
We're talking about that tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on. Did you get an email?
I didn't.
I talked to you about that over the weekend.
Oh, I thought we were supposed to do it today.
No, we're having a special meeting.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tomorrow at 5:30 via Zoom.
Okay.
Thank you.
Because you can't take any action on it. I mean, if you want to talk about it, but there's no action.
No, that's good. No, I didn't.
Remember, you and I talked about it.
Oh, I know, but I didn't see the special.
Yeah,
It must have come through
Trust
later
me.
today.
Yeah, trust me.
It was there. I saw it.
Because there was no school, so we couldn't post it. I talked to you
Yeah,
about
yeah.
it, remember? I said, Mike, there's no school on Friday. The town office is closed, so we can't post anything. We have to wait until Monday to post the meeting.
So they didn't have our packet ready, I guess. I went and picked up my thing this afternoon. They didn't have that, I guess.
No, it didn't come in packet. It came by email.
Okay, great.
So you and I, we talked about it.
We did, but I didn't see anything about special ed, but,
Yeah.
I work during the day. So
I know.
I didn't look at it until.
Yeah, no packet. By the time Joyce posted it this afternoon,
Great.
and then she just sent it out by email. But that's why I tried to call people up and tell them that we were having a special meeting, because I knew it would be delayed. It wouldn't come until today.
East Lawn.
All right?
Yeah, thanks.
Because we're going to need a vote on it.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. We can't vote tonight. All right, you want to go over the tracking sheet?
No, but I would rather say one quick comment, just in general order. I don't think you're doing with there. I'd rather you not cut me off like you did. I mean, other members have spoken at length on this issue, and, I would just ask for equal.
Yeah, I don't mind, but if you're going to say the same thing over and over again,
Saying
then...
the same thing over and over again. I was just saying my point.
I got your point.
Nobody else talks but me.
Okay.
Please.
Now, I asked them to keep it short. I tell Mike, can you keep it short? That's what Dean said, 15 seconds. All
It
right?
took 30, though.
I mean, we can have a policy that board members only get to speak like 3 minutes, like the town council does. But I hear from the public that some people just go on and on and on and on at these meetings. And
I have the right to make my point.
I know you do, I know, but make it concise. That's what I'm asking. Just make it concise, get to the point.
Numbers when they're having their time, so
All
I'm
right.
just saying.
All right, I get it, I get it.
Be quick sometimes. So.
All right, I get it. All right, COW tracking sheet. Everybody has it?
Yeah, on policy, we can strike.
No, I don't. Do you have to do it?
We're on the other side
I'm
of the
sorry.
page.
I'm
All right.
sorry. No, you
Do you do that in policy or do we do it here?
do whatever you want. You're the boss.
No, I'm just asking. If you want to do it, go ahead. You want to do policy?
Well, I had proposed that it was my referral to review policies, the homeschooling policy, and I'm going to take that off, withdraw that.
Okay.
I may bring it back sometime in the future, but we have too many other fish to fry.
Okay, and we're keeping the student use of AI and public comments, okay? Curriculum, you want to take anything off or add anything?
Yeah, if we can take off, we just did the financial literacy update. We just reviewed the math
Do you
curriculum.
have a date for that, Adrian? Do we know dates completely?
Whenever was it the 6th?
Tonight,
It was the 7th of April.
Okay.
So we talked about the math curriculum, but that's going to be an ongoing. So I don't know if we want to take that off or
No, we should leave it on since
just
it's
put
ongoing.
continued on it.
Just kind of add an annual review of the math curriculum, right?
Maybe just put ongoing after it or something. Honors classes beyond the 10th grade, that we've discussed. We've discussed it as a curriculum. I don't know if that can come off or if we want to have more discussion on that as a board. So that was yours, Ian. Do you want to? Should we ask Ian?
What did you discuss about it?
That
What did you come up with in curriculum?
we didn't come up with anything. We just we were told what the curriculum is and how it's going. As far as why some of the reasons for why we're not offering honors classes. I think more specifically in. I'm gonna on the spot, Mike. You gonna help me with this?
Yeah, I'd say basically we're presented with the matrix of honors classes and things, but not in terms of us trying to make a decision or anything. It was
Correct.
just as it says. I guess it's almost a review of honors classes beyond the 10th grade.
So the committee's not making any recommendations?
It wasn't presented. I mean, would you like us to?
No,
I mean,
it's up to
that's
you.
What do you?
Well,
Because
let's
if you
leave-
want to make a recommendation, you
Can I
put
hear
it
from
on
Ian
there.
on, because he was the one that, he was the one that initially made that referral. So you there, Ian?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
So what was the question? I'm sorry?
But was he part of the committee meeting that he heard what was going on?
No, but he made the initial referral, so I'm just
Okay.
kind of asking if if we went over what he was expecting or requesting in that referral.
Well, no, it just seemed more like reasons why they couldn't do what, what's been asked as far as like having honors level English courses. It's more focus of like how we're going to shift everyone to IB. It's definitely more of a presentation than it was options for other plans, other ideas, and there wasn't much like, it wasn't like a brainstorming session of like, well, okay, if we want to go this direction, it would look like this, this, and this, So I mean, there was it definitely felt like more like
Yeah.
A rollout as opposed as opposed to actual engagement on the subject and an analysis of what possibilities, what would it look like, right? These are thought, but first have to do the thought experiment, and say, okay, well, if we did want this as a board, what would it look like? What would we have to sacrifice? What's the cost benefit analysis, course wise, teacher wise, class sizes? What would it really look like if we did bring the honors in? It seemed like it was just like, this is what we're doing, and this is why we can't change. As opposed to saying, like, if there was a desire to change, this is what it would cost us to do so.
And it did seem like it focused down to, like there's honors levels, some of the other core areas, but it did seem like it's the English that would be the place that potentially could be added. And that actually, that did hold up they asked to have an IB English standard level, which is not a high level course, it's standard level. And we did not end up moving that forward. They're going to come back to us. But part of the reason was, well, why not have an honors course?
All right, guys, so
We'll leave it on
or
for
taking
now.
it off?
Yeah.
We'll leave it on for now.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
With regard financial literacy, Bev and Jay and Andrea will recall that when I first brought that topic to the board in early 22, we did not, to the best of my knowledge at that time, have any financial literacy component. And what I had proposed, and I deluged you guys with my usual packet of 800 pages, my usual packet of stuff on financial literacy programs around the country. At that moment, Connecticut was not mandated. Many states were, and I found resources for an integrated program of financial literacy. The key word here is integrated. What we have now, to the best of my knowledge, following the state, is I believe it's a half a credit mandatory financial literacy class. That's it. That's not to say that other teachers in the district don't integrate some stuff on their own, but we have never, from a curriculum point of view, examined whether or not we can suggest ways and make resources available, and there are a lot of free resources available, so that if you're a second or a third grade teacher who's teaching math, you can roll in some of these free resources to add in the mathematical function stays the same, but the way you teach it will roll in some stuff about responsibility for financial literacy, and likewise throughout the system. It was referred to the curriculum committee. The state made its mandate, and something happened. I have never heard back as to what happened, and my request was not to get you to, it's a request for an update. I'd simply like to know what happened to the initial proposal for an integrated program.
Of yours.
Yeah, that what I'm proposing. It was made, the board approved that it go be referred to the curriculum committee, then the state, made its, and things happened. I just would like to have an update, and do we have any materials available for teachers who feel that financial literacy is something that they individually think would be useful for the students, and B, where they can see that maybe in my area, whether it's social studies or whatever it is, I could wrap it in to accomplish my intended learning outcomes using these additional tools. And again, if you want me to do research to find more free materials, I'll be glad to do it. I'm not looking at buying a new program. So if you want to take it off, that's certainly your prerogative as chair, but I wanted you to have a background as to why I asked for an update. It's not a referral for financial literacy.
Yeah, it was just, we just had a discussion on the class itself.
Okay.
So
Maybe that's a request for a COW meeting to have an update from somebody from the Financial Literacy Department to come in and update us on what they're doing. Or maybe it's something you guys want to look at again, but at least now you know what the perspective was when it was referred to you initially.
Do you want them to look at it and then do what with it?
Well, I'd like to first know what it is. What is financial literacy? Is it a half-credit class? Is there has any consideration even been given to trying to integrate this as a modality of teaching what we're already teaching, not to add something new to the curriculum, but just let the teachers know that somebody in economics or history might be able to say, oh, I can teach this particular thing and roll in this little example.
That's a good point. Actually, as you know, the reading curriculum has been updated, right? Like at least at elementary level, and the next up is the math curriculum, and so that's not everything there, but that could factor in,
I just want you guys to consider, I'll be off the board in another few months, and I would like the idea of integrating a program so that it's not just a half credit when you're already in high school and getting ready to graduate. It's certainly far better than what we had before. But we have some opportunities there that are not going to be expensive.
You might be on the board, you'll get write-in votes.
Yeah.
Is that something the curriculum committee still wants to look at, this financial literacy?
It might be good to fold it in with the upcoming math.
Yeah, can we just change that to maybe integrated financial literacy?
Okay.
Any way you want to do it.
Yeah. But if we write that, then it'll actually, and let's leave it on, but we'll call it integrated financial literacy, and that will help us think about that when we talk about other curriculums, because obviously it's going to be difficult to bring up every curriculum and ask, can we make little modifications, especially with the younger kids, because those are kind of packaged programs, and the teachers are going to have a lot going on with those just on its own.
I do remember
Yeah, the programs might have
I do remember in kindergarten and first grade, the teacher had us bring home our empty milk cartons and stuff, and we had a little store, and we had pretend coins, and we had such a good time playing, but we had to learn how to count and how to subtract.
So we should
Anything else on your list, guys?
It's
I
almost
don't
like,
like course with Ian because
No, tell me to shut up because I've repeated myself. I really have. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Ian.
We'll just make a modification. Do you have anything else?
Oh, yeah, I did want to add one, considering what we were talking about today, just straight up number of credits for high school graduation.
You want to put that? We should put that on
Curriculum.
COW.
That's COW.
yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's not
So-
curriculum. That should, everybody should talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was-
we should.
I
That's
wrote
fair.
it down in my book.
Less work for us then.
I looked at 4 schools.
Well, we'll put
But Jen, let's not talk
we'll
about
put
it.
your initials after it.
Yeah, it's BW.
Okay, anything else for curriculum, guys? You done?
Yeah, we're done.
Okay. Policy's done. Dean, nothing for finance?
I don't see anything.
Okay.
I would like to add
I
one.
did ask Susan to have Ray, not Ray, what's his name, Sam, to give us a 4-month facilities plan, so we could put that down, and your committee could look at it too.
If you want to refer that to the committee, that's fine.
Okay. I think he's gonna, I asked Susan for him to talk about it at the board meeting, but you could keep track of it too.
So I'd like to add one to finance, and I don't quite know how to phrase it, but essentially, basically staffing levels relative to budgeted staffing, and that could be brought into expenses relative to budgeted expenses. I think there might be kind of sort of a systemic understaffing in certain areas at times that, something comes up every year, every time in budget season. It'd be nice off budget season to get a look at, are we 80% staffed always in such and such an area, or are we at 100%? Are we always under budget on school supplies? Well, I doubt that's the case. Or are we always over budget? Like something, but if you want more specific, just staffing levels relative to budget, and find that out outside of so it can inform our budget process, but so that it's not locked into the rush that we often have.
So that's where, like, during the budget cycle, right, like, I kept saying, like, we're supposed to, like, if she was truly doing a ground-up budget, right, in that salaries line, if the district has 400 people, associated salaries with the 400 people, it could be averages by, like, type teachers with 0 to 5 year classification, whatever, right? And then we cost that out so that we know, like, hey, going into it, we approve 400 people, and then the salaries, benefits, bonus is in our budget, so that when we're meeting monthly, they could say, are we on track, are we not on track, right? That's what part is always missing during, like, when we were doing our FTEs, we had 3 different numbers regarding FTEs. The ones on the pages is different than the summary one, different than the marketing one. And because it was never reconciled, we don't know if we have, like, we do know, like, how many principals, assistant principals, but then the teachers, the social workers, and all of the secondary levels, we have no visibility into that. Oh, okay, yeah. But anyway, well, that's a great add to our. That's a great add to our stuff.
Dean, do you understand what Mike wants?
I think so.
You think so?
Yeah. I mean, if you want, if you can think of a better formulation, but my understanding is so here's the problem that I see. You're right. At the FTEs, is it positions that we're supposed to be funding? Bodies we actually have? Bodies we'd like? What is the number? Why don't they jive like that? That's one problem. I don't think that's everything you're asking for, though.
Yeah, just if systemically we're, trying to get, I'll just use teachers, 10 teachers, but we can only ever hire 8 of them.
8 of
whatever,
the other 2
in
are
whatever.
chronically filled by substitutes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else for finance?
Yeah, also, if I can just build on that request for finance, maybe as part of that analysis, we could also look at what historically has been done. So there's been years where we've budgeted for staffing, but we haven't filled all the positions. So I'd like to know, to get a sense of, like, where the money goes if it's not spent on staffing in a given budget year. Where does it get shifted to in the budget?
Electricity,
Maybe
probably.
that'll be part of that report.
Okay.
Bev, can I just, building on your 4-month, request for discussion of a 4-month facilities plan, another thing that would be great to put in there, and since it's very convenient, is just a full tracking sheet for the building levels, because that came up in the GEA meeting too, and I think that and not necessarily even for the entire building to have access to it, but at least building administrators have access to a full tracking sheet. So when somebody asks for something in a building, it's written down, and at least can be, it takes a long time or is just not going to be done, at least it's written down somewhere so that they can refer back to it. So maybe if we could kind of bring that up as part of it.
Okay. I wrote it down. And I'm sure Dean wrote it down too, right?
I wrote it down.
Okay. Communications, discussion of mentor program. Who's on communications? You, Jen, right?
Myself.
Did you do any of this?
Not me.
Mike, you're on communications.
I don't know. I don't think I am.
Jay?
No, it's
Yeah.
Jen, me.
Oh, that's Adrian. Okay.
I don't think we met, right?
I would have been the worst member ever. Never been to one.
I was like, I didn't think Mike was on. But
Lack of communication.
uh,
Yeah, you look like.
So did you discuss the mentor program? That's Matthew's discussion.
We haven't met,
Okay.
well, we met briefly to discuss.
What did you want about the, can you be more specific?
Yes, ma'am.
Concise stuff.
I'm not sure why it's in the communication committee, other than I'd like to get a report as how we're doing. We built up from 2 mentors to the last I heard was 60 or 70. How's the program going? And maybe we can invite the, I think it's Jen Anthony and Sharon Schick to come in and talk to us. Allocate 45 minutes with half an hour. But that can be a cow. I don't know. I mean, it's up to you. It's in your committee. Whatever you want to do with it. Jay?
Jay is,
Jay left.
Jay left? No, his name's still up there.
But he sent me a message that he...
Okay.
all right.
It doesn't have, I don't see any committee work. There's
Yeah,
nothing
that's
to
what
do.
I don't say any committee work with this, according to what Matthew wants.
No.
Come to a COW and we all can listen to it. And don't forget the mentor dinner is coming up soon.
It's on my calendar.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to scratch that off. And I'm just going to put COW next to it.
I don't know if any other of my colleagues would be interested in going to that dinner, but sometime over your tenure, it would be worth hearing from these families. You'll hear all the families and the kids are there, of what it's doing for them and how it's improving not only the academic performance, but their social integration and their personal development.
I think Susan sent out a notice when the mentor, it's on the calendar.
It's, I think, the 25th.
Yeah, I don't know for sure, but I saw it on the calendar.
Yeah.
So I can send it out to you guys. Okay, COW. We took off review of survey questions prior to survey going out and discussion what the board would like the state legislators to consider. So we still have a lot on the COW. If you browse through it, is there anything we could take off? Or I didn't ask Jay about discussion of the school calendar. We will be developing the board goals next week on April 30th when we have our retreat. I didn't hear from anybody, so I already talked to Nick, and the only person I heard from was Andrea. So I already talked to Nick about what the agenda's going to look like. Ian, you got your hand up?
Maybe you could remove something I had proposed. Item R 2024-16, initiated 4/15/24 discussion, re-implementation of district's DEI plan. I think perhaps that would be wise to remove that.
What number is that again?
2024-16.
Oh, wait a second. Go ahead, I didn't hear. 24,
-16, yeah.
Take it off?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
we have to figure out how we can be true to ourselves without endangering funding lines.
Okay.
Oh, I don't know, that's kind of the context of what we're going to be discussing tomorrow, isn't it?
No, this is, we have a district DEI plan, and having a DEI plan as such,
I'm sorry, I'm just like, the way I read that agenda item, or that referral item, like, it seems to me to be directly related to what we're going to discuss tomorrow night regarding the US DOE letter and Connecticut's response to that and our decision that we have to make
well,
on what we're going to do. So,
I'll make the request to withdraw my request for a cow topic. If the board wants to keep it on the agenda, that's certainly the board's privilege, but I would request its removal.
Yeah. I agree.
I agree.
Anything else on this for Cal? I don't want to go over everything, so if you have something you want to take off or put on, Jen?
So I didn't request the first one. archiving all historical board meetings going back to 2016. Like,
That's it.
I don't know if we need to go back that far. Like,
That's Ian's thing.
oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not inclined to take that off the list, just
Okay.
because I think that is something we're discussing, but it's definitely not a high priority at this point in time. But, I mean, I think it would be good to have all those things up there at some point, but I want to know how the board feels about it. But, you know, I'm not inclined to take that off the referral list.
Okay.
Unless it's.
What's the purpose of going back to 2016? Because I'm just going to say, I don't want to make undue work for the staff. If we think people.
That'd be worthwhile considering, discussing as we make an agenda. Like, you know, that sounds like discussion. I'd rather not discuss it now. It's just debating whether or not we're going to keep it on the referral list.
Well, that's what we're doing now, discussing it.
Right, so like, what we archive back to, I think that would be part of the discussion. You know, whether, like, you know, if we talk about it, then we'd be like, well, maybe 2016 is too far, maybe do a different year as the end. If you want to know my rationale, why I phrase it like that for the referral, it's basically because that's when, to my understanding, when the recordings first started occurring, and the broadcast on YouTube occurred. That's the earliest date.
Anything else on that CLW list? Ethan?
Yeah, I just wanted to state that I did ask that we could talk about the state report card as part of this, because they are directly aligned, and it wasn't done tonight. So I would have loved to have crossed that one off, but we never, although board members pulled the report card up, and the report card is necessary in discussing what we discussed tonight, it wasn't discussed. So we can hopefully do it again next year.
Well, why can't we do it some other time?
We can, but it would go together with this beautifully, with this presentation. So, but
So you don't think we could do it?
we can. It would be somewhat redundant because we just discussed all the testing data, and discussing that in alignment with the state report card or Ed site was my hope. And it looks like I put this on exactly 1 year ago, which is probably right after this meeting.
But they have it like that on the agenda, state report card.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they didn't actually. They just.
Something when we were doing this. Listen, where's the state report card?
It's just not what the public sees.
I told Susan
I
told Susan a couple of weeks ago, or I asked her, I should say, a couple of weeks ago if we could bring that. But
Do me a
I
favor.
realize what the agenda says, but that what we actually went over was.
Do me a favor. If you get this information here and you see that it's not what you want in here, just call me up and I can see if I can get it done for you.
All right.
Okay? Because if that's something you want, then
Well, I felt like we had the discussion a few weeks ago, and then a decision was made not to do it. Is kind of the way I interpret things.
because
But-
it's on the agenda, state report card.
Yeah, I know, but we hit stuff on that was on the report card, but not the report card itself.
South, okay.
So, and then one other thing, like a new agenda item would be board approval of grant applications. And my reasoning on that is that the grants are part of the vision. Like what we like request grants for is part of the vision for the district, and I feel that the board should be included on that. And more formally, these grants have implications to our budget. Sometimes not directly, but sometimes when we start a program because of a grant, the board has to either hold other things, as we learned about IB. We couldn't get rid of some IB things because of a grant that is actually costing us money in the budget. So
That's why, did you hear me ask Susan to put that on the agenda? Whenever there's a grant, I asked her, because we do it at Learn, when Kate applies for a grant, she puts it on the agenda. I just talked to Susan about it. You were here.
Oh, no, I know, but you were, I thought, I understood that you were talking about when we got a new grant.
No,
the
before,
details
when
of
they
it.
apply for it, give it to us on the agenda, that this is what we're applying for this grant.
All right. Well, can we, I mean, is that reasonable to just say board approval of grant, and then we can have a discussion about, because I'm sure some things don't necessarily need to go through board approval, like title grants and that kind of thing, but some of the competitive grants
I
are.
think that's a great idea, because I can think of topics that administration has said, we're looking into this, and then we're applying for this, and then we were awarded this, and there had never been discussion nor a vote on significant grants.
I wouldn't want to prohibit them from applying for a grant, but I like to know about the grant and what the grant entails.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't say, oh, no, don't apply for that grant, because grants are free money. You know,
Yeah.
if
But they
think
have
need the
opportunity,
grant.
they have
Well, I
costs.
think what
They have
Adrian is
costs.
saying is that he, well, listen, everyone else is
Oh.
talking for free as well.
Well, I'll
No, I'm looking at them when they're talking.
Virtually,
Okay.
for me to know.
Well, raise your hand and I'll get to you. I saw your hand up.
My hand's been raised for 2 minutes. So I'm just saying, I think what Adrian's getting at is that he wants to have the board to have an opportunity for some of these competitive grants, like say for the, the review one that's going to IB programming, to have an idea, like an opportunity for the board to have input on what we're going to apply for the grant, how we shape the grant. When we apply for it, sometimes there's binding language in how you apply for it, so that directs where it's going to go. That's what I'm in favor. If that's the intent of what Adrian's referral is, I'm in 100% support of that.
Yeah.
Because I think the board should be able to have some influence on that.
Yeah, that is what my intent right now is to have board discussion, because I'm sure that the administration is going to have things to say when sometimes the grant is due and they don't have time to get applications in front of the board. But at least we can start that discussion. Certain things I do think that the board should approve, but maybe if we can just have discussion, we can talk about all these ideas. So if we can put it on the agenda.
I think what Adrian's saying, I'm just kidding. I'd like to add, I'd just like to generalize this a little bit, not just to board approval, but to include, I'd really like us to get their reports on the grants. So maybe this is more board involvement in grants applications and grants progress. So I'd like that part too.
So you want the superintendent to come to you and say, is it all right if I apply for the food to school grant? You want to dictate all the grants that the central office applies for? Is that what this board wants to do?
No, I think we should have discussion on certain things.
Discussion.
No, well, maybe the board can make a decision if they want to approve all the grants. My thing is I want to talk about it, and I agree what Mike's talking. Like,
I'll put it
it's
on
an
the
agenda item.
Now we're discussing. I'll put it on the agenda.
But yeah, I think broadening it out to include Mike's idea would be helpful.
I'd like to add another item.
Go ahead.
Okay, it would say to discuss a simple student exit survey. This builds on what I was talking about before, about the students who are not graduating, that they are a resource that we could use. Similarly, I think that at graduation time, or maybe a couple of weeks before graduation time, we have a simple survey that goes to all of our seniors, asking them to tell us, and I said simple, it's not no Likert scales, just what worked for you during your tenure with us, what didn't work for you during your tenure with us, what recommendations would you make to the Groton Public Schools so that your successor students have the best possible outcome. And they don't need names, don't need scores. It'll be some work. I'll volunteer to do some of it, to aggregate the stuff together. But again, I believe these are our clients, and they're going to teach us a lot if we give them the chance. So a simple student exit survey.
Do we have the credits to graduation on this? That's going on? So we're good there.
Do you need anything? No. Thank God. Okay.
Thank me.
I took one off and put one on. Net zero. My carbon footprint is net zero.
All right. So anything else on the COW referral list? Want everything else to stay?
Just do it all in one meeting.
Yeah, all right.
Next time.
Who's going to cater?
Some of these should be quick though, right?
Should.
That was good. Are you serious? All right, motion to adjourn.
Oh,
You want to say?
Oh, motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Oh, wait,
Can I
okay.
have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
we're done.
Okay.
I'd just like to say it was a wonderful meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, so I looked at first